Chapter 892. There was light rain and no wind today. A small green nunnery was half hidden among the weeping willows. The stone slabs on the ground had been stepped on by countless people, and the corners were polished to a mirror-like texture. The teacher, who had a square appearance and an old-fashioned aura, sat cross-legged on a praying mat made of golden jade grass. His eyes swept across the people, listening to him solemnly, and he spoke at a moderate pace. Everyone knows that only by stepping into the godly state can one become extraordinary and truly achieve something. But what is the godly state, and how many people can truly understand it? He looked at the desire in the eyes of the people listening to him, paused slightly, and continued. In fact, the definition of the godly state has been constantly revised and changed over the countless years. What I said today is only my own understanding. You can listen to it, but don't keep it in mind, because it may be right for me, but it may not be for you. The teacher's body became even straighter, and his voice was low and solemn. All living beings in the world, except for a few gifted ones, begin the process of death from the day they are born. At the end of the day, everyone cultivates for the sake of pursuing immortality. The path to immortality is bitter and difficult. It is long like thousands of soldiers and horses fighting for a canoe. The slightest carelessness will cause you to fall, and half a lifetime of hard work will be in vain. Only by achieving the godly state can one condense the rules of heaven and earth, turn it into one's own godly imprint, and borrow the power of heaven and earth to protect one's era forever. Therefore, for us cultivators, the godly state is a milestone in climbing the godly state. Only by reaching this realm can one truly fulfill the original wish of stepping into the cultivation world, to not be limited by lifespan, to be able to cross endless time and coexist with the sun and moon. The teacher slowed down his speech. Perhaps you are not interested in these and more interested in knowing how to break through to the godly state. In fact, there is no fixed rule for this path. In billions of years, there are thousands of ways to achieve the godly state. Some people cultivate silently, step by step, and with deep accumulation, they finally trigger a qualitative change and condense the godly imprint. Some people comprehend the heaven and earth and have always been unknown. Once they comprehend the godly state, they can add rules to their bodies in a few steps and achieve the godly state. There is also a powerful bloodline hidden in the human body. After being tempered and continuously stimulated, one can use the bloodline in the body to forcefully shake the heavens and the earth, triggering the resonance of the heavens and the earth. One can also obtain the imprint of a god. In my eyes, there are only two levels of cultivation in the world, below and above the god realm. If one did not become a god, everything was fabricated and not worth mentioning at all. Be it divine abilities or magic treasures or tools, they were all just small das in the human world. Those who wish to become gods must remember one thing: pursue the limits of the world, and when you reach a certain limit, take one more step and you will become a god. 3 days later, the lecture finally came to an end. Qin Yu lowered his head and thought for a moment. Then, he stood up and left with everyone else. In his mind, the teacher's words kept echoing, "Pursue the world's peak." This sentence seemed to be general, but it revealed a fact. There were countless paths to the godly realm, and so long as one had the perseverance to try, there was a possibility of success. Then, what were his paths to the godly state? "Fellow Taoist, please wait." A warm and honest voice echoed out from behind him. Qin Yu stood still and turned around. A cultivator smiled and bowed. "My name is Yang Dingbua. Seeing that fellow Taoist comes here alone every time, I wonder if you would be willing to join our discussion group? The group is made up of cultivators from various monasteries. Everyone can exchange their experiences with each other, and there will always be some benefits." Qin Yu shook his head. He said, "I am used to being alone and am not good at socializing with others. I appreciate your kindness, but I will bid my farewells." After speaking, he turned and left. Several people walked to Yang Dinggua's side. their complexions unkind. Humph! He doesn't know how to appreciate favors. Brother Yang personally invited him, but he directly refused. Such an eccentric person who only knows how to build a cart behind closed doors. Even if he has some talent, it is impossible for him to succeed in reaching his current level. Great waves wash away sand. Eventually, there will be those who fall behind. Only then will a golden jade emerge. This person has severed his own path to the great Tao, so why waste time on him? Yang Dingbua smiled and nodded. He looked at Qin Yu's fading back, a helpless look in his eyes. This person was actually so vigilant. It was truly a pity that he didn't give him a chance. Qin Yu could clearly hear the cold words coming from behind him. But his expression remained calm, and there wasn't even the slightest change in his eyes. Everyone wanted to break into the divine realm and stand out from the endless sea of mayflies. They wanted to leap out of the sea and transform into a kuanpeng, soaring through the highest heavens for 100,000 miles. In order to accumulate one's own foundation, not only did one need patience and talent, but they also needed enough luck. Otherwise, a single mistake could lead to death. How could it be as quick and easy as robbing others? However, there are trillions of lives in this world, and each person had their own path. Qin Yu didn't judge them. As long as they didn't involve him, he wouldn't interfere. The road was chosen by oneself. As for the sweet and sour results, only they could taste them. Hey, that Yang Dingbua just now is quite famous in the surrounding monasteries. Why didn't you agree when he personally invited you? Qin Yu furrowed his eyebrows. He didn't stop and continued to walk outwards. If it weren't for him expressing his respect to the monastery's teachers, he would have long since teleported away. Hey! A woman jumped out and blocked Qin Yu's path. Her petite body couldn't even reach his shoulder, and her eyes were as round as a little tiger's, filled with ill intent. It seemed that if Qin Yu continued to ignore her, she would jump up and bite him. Qin Yu stopped and frowned. How I choose has nothing to do with you. For better or worse, we can be considered classmates, and we've listened to several teachers' lessons together. Is there a need to keep people at a distance of 1,000 miles? The woman bit her lips, her eyes filled with dissatisfaction. Qin Yu said, "Keep a bit further away, and I won't refuse you." As he finished speaking, he turned and walked away. After leaving the range of the monastery's blue stone slabs, the surrounding space twisted and he vanished from sight. The woman stamped her feet in anger. She glared at the place where he disappeared and muttered something under her breath. "Xiaoyu, is that the person you always mention, the very cold fellow? Besides his appearance being so, there isn't anything special about him at all. Is he really worth your attention?" A thin youth walked over and grinned. "Lei," Xiaoyu glanced at him. "You don't understand." A young woman walked over, her long skirt fluttering in the wind. She covered her mouth and smiled. "Xiaoyu said that you don't understand, so don't interrupt. In any case, I feel that this person gives off a sense of security. He should have a bit of background." The thin youth sneered. "So what? If you can't reach the divine realm, you are nothing but an ant." His eyes turned. "How about we make a bet? As long as Xiaoyu reveals even the tiniest bit of information about my family background, this person will stick to me like a dog's skin plaster. I won't be able to drive him away. Qiao Yaozong, shut up for me. If even the tiniest bit of information is leaked out, I won't forgive you." Seeing Lei Xiaoyu fly into a rage, the thin youth shrunk his neck. He wasn't angry, only chuckling twice before dropping the subject. The woman beside him tried to smooth things over. "Xiaoyu, don't be angry. Even if this person is a stone, sooner or later he will know how good you are. I heard that several days ago a new auction house opened. The owner's background is quite great and they collected many good things. How about we go take a look?" Lei Xiaoyu shook her head. "I'm not going. I want to go home and cultivate. I'll be leaving first." After leaving the distorted space, Qin Yu boarded the carriage. Seeing his gloomy complexion, the driver, Xiang Shui, covered her mouth and laughed. "What is it? Did you run into that little girl again today? Qinyu, I really suspect that you weren't telling the truth at the beginning. Otherwise, why would that little girl chase after you every time? Could it be that you took advantage of her, and now you don't want to admit it? Stop talking nonsense. Let's go home." Qin Yu's impatient voice sounded out from the carriage. Xiang Shui giggled. She flicked her whip, and the old horse she bought at the market snorted. Then she pulled the carriage into the city. Within the carriage, Qin Yu rubbed his temples, a helpless look on his face. His connection with Lei Xiaoyu was a completely accidental result. At the beginning, this little girl seemed to have a conflict with her family and had deliberately thrown off the bodyguards that were secretly following her. Afterwards, she had been targeted by several people who were blind enough to think that she was a fat sheep. At the time, Qin Yu simply didn't want to care about this spoiled and willful young miss of an extraordinary background. But those people were really blind. As soon as they saw Qin Yu, they didn't say anything and simply surrounded him. Qin Yu had no choice but to act. After sending away those people, he turned and left. He didn't even hear what Lei Xiaoyu shouted behind him. Afterwards, that surnamed Lei girl became a shadow that he couldn't shake off. Wherever he went, she would follow. He took a deep breath and suppressed these irrelevant thoughts. His expression became tranquil once more as he focused on proper business. Over the last 2 months, he had visited all of the surrounding monasteries, large and small. The mister he met today could be considered one of the highest standards. Of course, Qin Yu wouldn't truly believe everything he said. At the very least, what this mister said about being able to coexist with the sun and moon after reaching the divinity realm was clearly wrong. Although Qin Yu hadn't stepped into the divinity realm, his experience and level meant that he was destined to know far more than ordinary cultivators, let alone a divinity realm existence. Even existences that were countless times stronger than them couldn't truly transcend the limits of eternal life. Otherwise, where did the marks left behind in the jade egg come from? In order to have the qualifications to leave behind their own immortal mark in the world, one that wouldn't wither even after being washed over by time, just what sort of boundary was needed to accomplish this? Qin Yu didn't know, but he knew that even the dragon overlord that had been killed off was 108,000 miles away from this boundary. As for the dragon overlord, he was definitely at the divinity realm. Moreover, he was an incomparably powerful figure. But there was one thing that Qin Yu could confirm. There were many, many ways to break into the divinity realm. And when breaking through, with every additional condition that was met, the divine spirit mark that was condensed would have one more halo than others. Not only were these halos beautiful to look at, but more importantly, they could allow a cultivator to control them. They would become more powerful, and their future prospects would become increasingly vast. Chapter 893. It wasn't just empty words. The halos surrounding the god spirit mark really represented supreme glory. Basically, a 3-ring god spirit realm expert wouldn't associate with a 1-ring god spirit mark, and a 5-ring god spirit mark wouldn't put a 3-ring god spirit mark in their eyes. As for the 7-ring god spirit mark or higher, those were legendary existences. Each of them had a great background and a great destiny. They were the favored children of heaven and earth. As long as they lived peacefully and didn't get killed, they were destined to have great achievements in the future. According to Xiang Shui, the most powerful god spirit mark she had ever seen in her life had 6 halos of glory shining around the god spirit mark. It was so bright that it could blind a person's eyes. At that time, when she faced an original god realm expert, she was treated with great respect. She almost had the chance to stand on equal footing with him. This was because the god realm cultivators of this world understood that only 5-ring god spirit realm experts and above had the chance to become original god realm experts. And the more halos of glory one had, the more potential they had. After Qin Yu heard this news, He was so frightened that he broke out in a cold sweat. He now knew what kind of oppression he had felt when he formed the immortal body of the ancient race. That was the God-realm barrier, also known as the Heaven and Earth Dragon Gate. As long as he succeeded, he could trigger the feedback of Heaven and Earth to condense the God Spirit mark and directly reach the God realm. Qin Yu didn't doubt that with the immortal body of the ancient race and his status as the king of the ancient race, he could easily break through the Heaven and Earth Dragon Gate. Luckily, he had hesitated at the time and restrained his strength. Otherwise, if he condensed the God Spirit mark of the ancient race, he wouldn't even have a place to cry. Sure enough, cultivation was the best. Only a competent guide was enough. If he climbed blindly, who knew when he would suffer a great loss? Thus, Qin Yu listened to Xiang Shui's suggestion. He entered various monasteries and did his best to fill in the blanks of his future cultivation. After these 2 months of study, Qin Yu constantly sorted out his body. He gradually had an idea of how to condense the God Spirit mark. Letting out a breath, Qin Yu muttered, "After listening to a few more lectures, I might be able to start and try my first attempt." The carriage entered the city. This was an ordinary human city. There were many cultivators in the city, but those that could truly be considered masters, in Qin Yu's eyes, were at most half of them. The residence was a simple, small courtyard. Before the carriage even got close, the courtyard gate was already opened from the inside, and running over to lead the horse. Qin Yu got off the car and nodded at him. Without saying a word, he went straight to the door. He had some ideas in his mind and was anxious to verify them. Looking at his retreating figure, and Ku's face was filled with admiration. For Sir to have his current strength, it is definitely not a coincidence. This kind of self-control and hard work is not something an ordinary person can compare to. Xiang Shui gave him a slap on the forehead and curled her lips. He has already gone far away. Who are you flattering to? Humph, humph. That brat Qin Yu, he lives his days so tight it's like there's a dog chasing after him. He really doesn't have any fun at all. And Ku smiled, not saying a single word. Although she hadn't seen Xiang Shui fight before, it wasn't hard to guess just how strong she was from her attitude towards Qin Yu. Sister Xiang Shui, I'm going to bathe the horse first. The wine it wanted to drink is gone again. We have to go out and get more wine later. Otherwise, it'll throw a tantrum before dinner time. Xiang Shui waved her hand. Go, go. She turned and returned to her room, and Ku patted the old horse's somewhat withered fur. Let's go, Uncle Horse. You've worked hard pulling the carriage these past 2 times. Now it's my turn to serve you. The old horse snorted and allowed Ku to help it get off the carriage. Then it walked towards the stable with its head held high, as if this were a matter of course. And Ku helplessly smiled. He didn't know just what the Lord saw in this old horse. It was clearly so old that it couldn't even walk, but it was so difficult to serve. It didn't eat what other horses ate, and it wanted wine and meat for every meal. The meat wasn't too picky, but the wine couldn't be fooled. And Ku had to spend a great deal of effort to figure out what it liked. Sometimes Ku couldn't help but think that this old horse had some great background. But no matter how much he observed it, he didn't obtain any harvests. So he tossed this thought to the back of his mind. 10,000 miles away, Rock City was an astonishingly large city with millions of cultivators gathered here. It was the most dazzling pearl in the surrounding area for hundreds of thousands of miles. The city lord mansion held all authority. Although the city lord was nominally loyal to the royal family, he was actually a local tyrant. Today, after the city lord finished handling his daily chores, he took out a steaming hot towel and placed it on his face. He closed his eyes and asked, "How has Xiaoyu been these past few days?" A neat and tidy steward with a mellow and restrained aura knew what the city lord was asking. He smiled and said, "Miss has been cultivating very seriously recently. It's just that her personality is still a bit jumpy. She has been constantly moving between several nunneries and hasn't made a decision yet." The city, Lord fell silent for a moment. He pulled down the towel on his face and lightly said, "Have you investigated?" The steward had a serious expression. Yes. He didn't say anything else. He took out a jade slip and offered it with both hands. Lei Qianjun received it and probed it with his divine sense. After several breaths of time, he nodded. "I understand." The steward knew that it was time for him to leave. He respectfully bowed and took several steps back before leaving. After leaving the door, the steward straightened up. It was only now that he discovered that the city lord was very tall. His eyes were slightly drooping as he looked down at the two black-clothed cultivators in front of him. He ordered, "Keep a close watch on him. If you discover that this person has any ill intentions towards the miss, kill him without mercy." Yes. The two black-clothed cultivators bowed and quietly left. The steward folded his hands together. He looked up at the sky and squinted his eyes. The city lord had said that he understood, but that didn't mean that he would drop the matter. Rather, he wanted him to continue monitoring them and keep everything under control. The story of a princess falling in love with a gray boy. Haha, perhaps such a thing really did exist. But, at the very least, the city lord wouldn't allow it. The steward straightened his back, and the swift and fierce aura that appeared just now vanished like a flash in the pan. He turned and stood outside the door, closing his eyes. Within the room, Xiang Shui opened her eyes. She glanced to the side, a cold chill appearing in the depths of her eyes. The two people who had been monitoring them had actually returned. If it weren't for Qin Yu telling her not to complicate matters, she would have already acted and cut off their heads. Who could it be? After they entered the human territory, they had maintained a very low profile and hadn't done anything that aroused suspicion. Her thoughts raced. Then, Xiang Shui thought of Lei Xiaoyu, who chased after Qin Yu all day. Her lips curved up in a strange smile. Was it because of her? That's right. That little girl seemed to have an extraordinary background. What was this? The hardest thing to endure was the grace of a beauty, or was it the calamity of love? Men really couldn't be too handsome. Otherwise it would be troublesome if they attracted the attention of bees and butterflies. As she thought of another topic to tease Qin Yu about, Xiang Shui closed her eyes in satisfaction. She temporarily gave up on finding trouble with these two people. Now, what she was most curious about was when Qin Yu would begin to knock on the heaven and earth dragon gate and reach the divine realm. Xiang Shui didn't doubt that Qin Yu would successfully knock on the heaven and earth dragon gate. What she wanted to know was how many rings of glory Qin Yu could condense. Xiang Shui believed that he would at least have 5 rings. After all, he was a powerful freak that had killed a dragon overlord before he reached the divine realm. After listening to another 3 lectures from Xuan, Qin Yu unsurprisingly ran into Lei Xiaoyu each time. Every time, Lei Xiaoyu would fly into a rage, but she wouldn't grow impulsive. Every time, she would approach him on her own initiative. Qin Yu thought for a moment and decided not to go out to listen to the lectures. It wasn't that he was afraid of this little girl, but that he discovered that listening to the lectures was no longer of any use to him. Although saying this was a bit disdainful of those cultivators who tirelessly chased after Xuan year after year, in front of the Qin Yu who possessed the jade embryo egg, all of them present were nothing but trash. Qin Yu decided to begin. Besides the ancient immortal body, this would be his second road to reach the divine realm. On this road, he chose the blue finger. After summing up the lectures of the many teachers, Qin Yu made a simple summary of the road to breaking into the divine realm. The blue finger could be considered a violent path. With an extremely powerful attack, one could forcefully shake the world's rules and obtain their recognition and feedback, using this to condense a divine spark mark. Of course, Qin Yu only wanted the power of the blue finger to smoothly shake the world. He wouldn't actually condense a divine spark mark. Qin Yu went into seclusion. With the help of the jade embryo egg's super strong abilities, he began to probe and perceive the power of the blue finger, striving to reach the divine realm. Then Lei Xiaoyu went crazy. she discovered that the hateful Chinyu had disappeared without warning. Only cultivators who sensed the heaven and earth dragon sect would give up everything and wander around the various monasteries, seeking a turning point to break through. If there were no accidents, they would continue to stay here until they had confidence in themselves. Only then would they quietly leave and enter seclusion. But Chinyu hadn't appeared for long, so why did he disappear? Was he hiding from me? Lei Xiaoyu couldn't accept this. Humph! If you want to hide, I won't let you. Lei Xiaoyu secretly mobilized her strength, casting a net in all the surrounding monasteries. As long as Chinyu appeared, he wouldn't be able to escape. But as the days passed, there was no news. Lei Xiaoyu first gritted her teeth, but gradually she became listless. At the start, she didn't have any other intentions. She just wanted to thank Chinyu for saving her. But afterwards, Chinyu's attitude stirred up a rebellious mentality in Lei Xiaoyu. The more you ignore me, the more I want to approach you. Once you know I'm fine, I will turn around and leave without hesitation. I will let you experience what it means to be sad. But Chinyu didn't give her this chance. Instead, Lei Xiaoyu felt a deep emptiness in her heart. She rubbed her eyes and resisted the urge to cry. Chinyu, you smelly bastard, you better not let me find you. Otherwise I will teach you a lesson. In a flash, 3 months passed. Chinyu opened his eyes, a happy look on his face. He had now thoroughly comprehended the blue finger. Although he hadn't tested it yet, he was confident in its might. He stood up and his figure flickered, vanishing from his room. When he reappeared, he was outside the city. Sweeping out with his divine sense, Chinyu didn't discover anything wrong. He lifted a hand and pointed out. Rumble, rumble. The spiritual strength of the heavens and earth boiled, vast and mighty like a sea. But at this moment, Chinyu frowned. He could feel an invisible suppression coming from the world. Although it was intense, the feeling Chinyu felt was just a little bit lacking. It was this difference that caused Chinyu to realize that his plan to use the blue finger to open up a second road to the divine realm wasn't feasible for the time being. With a flick of his sleeves, he dispersed the strength of the blue finger, not allowing it to crash down. Chinyu's face darkened. It shouldn't be like this. He had already perceived the strength of the blue finger to a certain limit, so it should be simple for him to break through to the divine realm. Just where was the problem? Chapter 894. After returning to their residence outside the city, Xiang Shui gave Chinyu another lesson regarding the carrying capacity of the soul. After cultivating to this day, you should understand that the soul is the foundation of all living beings. It is far more precious than the mortal body. When one's strength reaches a certain degree and they can sense the existence of the heaven and earth dragon gate, they will need to open up a path of their own and open the door to the divinity realm. For example, the soul is the foundation and the road of the divine Tao is the palace above. Only when the foundation is solid enough and large enough can the palace be built into a sturdy and beautiful palace. Of course, strictly speaking, this analogy isn't particularly appropriate. You can understand it this way for now. No matter what kind of road of the divine Tao you conclude, in the end it must be built upon your own soul. With the intensity of your soul, it shouldn't be a problem for you to simultaneously support 3 or more roads of the divine Tao. But it is clear that there are some circumstances that I don't know about. Xiang Shui's eyes shined as she looked at Chinyu. If you are willing to be honest with me and tell me about your situation, I don't mind patiently listening and helping you come up with a plan. Chinyu frowned, not speaking. What was there to be honest with? Let alone Xiang Shui. It was impossible for him to tell anyone else. He had far too many secrets on his body, so many that he felt apprehensive just thinking about them. If he were to expose 1 or 2 of them, that would be a fatal matter. What Xiang Shui said should be correct. The problem lay in the carrying capacity of his soul. As for the reason, Qin, you first thought of the little blue lamp. Even now, its existence was filled with inconceivable mysteries to Chinyu. As for the other reason, Qin thought of the sun and moon force field in his soul space. Although he didn't fully understand its function, the power of the sun and moon force field was beyond doubt. Qin rubbed his temples and let out a long breath. He ignored Xiang Shui's expectant gaze and directly said, "What methods do you have?" Xiang Shui curled her lips. "There are many methods, but I don't know the specific reason, so I can only give you the most difficult suggestion." She stretched out a hand, her palm facing upwards. "For example, this palm is your soul. Right now, it is too small and isn't enough for you to open a road of the divine Tao. But as long as it is like this," as she spoke, she spread her fingers apart, "if your soul is powerful, your carrying capacity will naturally increase and the difficulties will be easily solved. But don't say that I didn't warn you. Treasures that strengthen the soul, no matter what realm, are incomparably precious treasures. Not to mention, you've already reached the level where you can sense the heaven-earth dragon gate. It's extremely difficult to raise the strength of your soul." Qin Yu nodded. "What you say makes sense." Xiang Shui turned to look at Qin Yu and then back at him. She blinked, a bit puzzled. She thought for a moment and said, "You don't seem worried at all." Meeting her eyes, Qin Yu smiled. He nodded in acknowledgement but didn't say anything. This was because at this time, Qin Yu had already thought of a way to find powerful soul treasures. Rivawada City was where Qin Yu and the others were currently living. It wasn't large in scale and could barely be considered a human city with half a master. The only half-master was an old man. He wore tattered clothes all day and dragged a broken leg as he leaned against the roadside. He looked exactly like a miserable beggar. If someone gave them food, they would take a bite. If they were ignored, they would curl up into a ball and sleep under the sun. The disheveled old man had stayed in the city for many years. He was a very lazy person and basically never left this street. Many of the residents on the street had already recognized him. It was said that some years ago a rich family pitied him and wanted to help him heal his broken leg before giving him a living. But the disheveled old man flatly refused. He shook his head and said that he was already very satisfied with his current life and didn't want to change anything. Now that this was mentioned, those who knew the disheveled old man couldn't help but curse that he deserved it and that he was the one who brought this miserable situation upon himself. The disheveled old man didn't care about these rumors at all. He lived his life as he should and was quite happy. On this day it was drizzling. The gloomy sky was accompanied by gusts of wind and there was a biting chill to it. The people on the street were in a hurry, most of them unwilling to stay outside in this weather. The disheveled old man lay down on a rock in satisfaction, allowing the rain to wash over him and wash away the filth on his body. The muddy water flowed down, dyeing the puddles of water on the ground black. A few horse carriages stopped far away, and a few people alighted one after another. Many people on the street and behind the windows of the buildings on the left and right had looks of awe on their faces. Although it seemed like they were walking on the street, there was a thin line between their feet and the ground. There was no way their boots would get wet. The thin lines of rain that fell from above seemed to have hit an invisible barrier as they slid to the sides. "Old sir, we meet again. To think that you would still be here after so many years," an old man with white hair and beard said with a hint of respect in his tone. The expressions of the few young men behind him changed slightly as they frowned at the disheveled old man. However, no matter how they looked at him, he was just a dirty beggar, because he hadn't washed up all year round. The stench from his body was indeed a little pungent after being splashed by the rain. Two of the girls could not help but cover their mouths and noses with disgust in their eyes. The disheveled old man's eyes opened a slit, and his face was filled with wrinkles as he sized up the old man. "Who are you? Leave if you have nothing to do. Don't disturb me while I'm bathing." At that moment, the few calm young men could not help but have a change in their expressions as they looked at him with unfriendly gazes. The old man with white hair and beard raised his hand to stop the disciples behind him while maintaining his smile. "Old sir, It's normal for you to not remember me, since you observe all sorts of people every day. 40 years ago, I asked you a question at this place." He paused for a moment and reminisced. "At that time, I didn't quite understand your answer and thought that I had gone mad to believe your words. But later on, I found out that your answer was truly invaluable advice that allowed me to achieve what I have today." The old man cupped his fists. "The reason why I'm here today is firstly to thank you for answering my question back then. Secondly, I wish to invite you to leave with me. I've already obtained permission to build a new nunnery. If you're willing, old sir, you'll be half the owner of this nunnery." At that moment, the disciples behind the old man were truly shocked as their eyes widened in disbelief. The fact that he was recognized and had the right to build a nunnery was proof of his teacher's strength. Even a few days ago, when facing the Lord of Wreck Journey who had received them, the true owner of this region, his teacher had not been this respectful. Just who in the world was this old man? To think that he was worthy of such treatment from his teacher. At that moment, the rain was heavier than before. The dense raindrops formed long lines that struck the disheveled old man's face mercilessly. He could not help but squint his eyes as though he was sizing up the person before him seriously. After a while, the disheveled old man mumbled something softly before closing his eyes and chasing them away. "I don't remember speaking to you. Even if I did, I've long forgotten what it was. Hurry up and leave. Don't affect my mood." The old man hesitated for a moment before sighing. "I don't know what concerns old sir has, but my sincere invitation remains unchanged. If you change your mind in the future, you can ask around for the name by Tsongyue. The doors of the nunnery that I'm building will always be open for you." The disheveled old man could not even be bothered to speak this time as he waved his hands at them. "Teacher, since old sir is unwilling to submit, we'll take our leave," a young disciple said respectfully behind him. Before Bai Tsongyue could speak, a calm voice sounded from the rain behind them. "Yes, you should have left long ago. Why stay here and touch upon sad matters?" The disheveled old man's eyelids twitched heavily as he lay on the rock in the rain. Although he did not open his eyes, the rise and fall of his chest was much greater than before. The group of people turned around and saw a black-robed man standing in the rain. His entire body seemed to be one with the heavy rain. The raindrops fell from his head, passed through his body, and fell to the ground, merging with the water that had gathered. Sensing his aura, this person did not seem to be very strong. However, he was obscured by the clouds and mist. He was clearly standing there, but seemed to be an endless distance between them. In fact, no one had even noticed when he had appeared here. Bai Tsongyue frowned slightly and cupped his hands. "Sir, why do you say so?" Although he could not see the figure beneath the black robes, this person's aura was filled with the vicissitudes of time and was worthy of this title. Of course, the most important reason was that Bai Tsongyue could not see through the person in front of him. He was like a phantom, blurry and untouchable. At first glance, he seemed as fragile as a mirror, as if he could crush it with a finger. But if one carefully sensed him, they could feel a trace of threat. A trace of a fatal threat. That's right, it was fatal. To Bai Tsongyue, this description wasn't excessive at all. This was originally just a question to open up the situation. He didn't think that the other party would actually answer, but things went beyond his expectations once more. The black-robed man lightly said, "This little fellow should have made some mistakes in the past and been imprisoned in this place. It's not that he doesn't want to leave, but that he can't leave." Shua, the disheveled old man that was lying on the rock and had treated Bai Tsongyue and his group with a nasty attitude, suddenly fell to his knees. "Junior begs Senior to show mercy and rescue me." Bang, bang! As he kowtowed, water splashed out in all directions. The stone floor cracked open, and dark red blood flowed down his forehead, mixing with the rainwater and quickly dyeing everything red. Filthy, filthy long hair mixed with blood and rainwater stuck to his face, making him look even more distressed. Ban-Bu's eyes peeked out from the cracks. He nervously stared at Chinyu, afraid that he would turn and leave. How many years had it been? This was the first time that Ban-Bu had encountered someone who could see through his desperate situation. If he missed this chance, he didn't know how many more years he would have to wait. Or it could be said that Ban-Bu wasn't sure how many more years he could last. Bang, bang. The sound of kowtowing filled the air. More and more blood flowed out. The black-robed man stood there, maintaining his initial calm and indifference, as if he didn't see what was happening in front of him. The air suddenly became heavy, as if an invisible mountain had arrived, pressing down on everyone's heads. They subconsciously lowered their heads, and even gasping for breath became difficult. Bai Tsongyue hesitated again and again. "This mister—" His following words were interrupted by a glance from the black-robed man. Bai Tsongyue felt a chill run down his back, as if he had been completely seen through. Below his chest, where there were hidden dangers left behind from breaking into the divine realm, he began to feel sore and numb. Luckily, this gaze only swept over him for a moment before it fell onto Ban-Bu. The black-robed man's old voice sounded out. "If it weren't for the fact that I had an old relationship with your ancestor and that you have already suffered enough punishment these past years, do you think I would appear here?" Ban-Bu was stunned. It was unknown what he was thinking, but tears began to roll down his face. He fell to the ground and said in a sorrowful voice, "I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. I beg Mister to save me. Save me. I never return empty-handed. Remember this, well, there is a mountain outside the city where the sun, moon, yin and yang cannot invade. After you escape, find a treasure that can enhance the soul and bring it over." Junior obeys. In the rain, the black-robed man lifted a hand and pointed out a finger. He didn't do anything else, but everyone present could hear a light cracking sound. He turned and stepped backwards. Then his black robes melted into the curtain of rain and vanished from everyone's sight. Just like when he arrived, the difference was that even though they could only watch helplessly, they didn't know how the black-robed man had left. Ban-Bu, who was kneeling on the ground, respectfully kowtowed in the direction that the black robe had left. He slowly stood up from the ground. His entire person was like a long sword that had been shaken off the mottled rust on its surface, releasing a powerful aura that made people's hearts palpitate. Bang! Above Riverwater City, the curtain of rain that covered the skies instantly vanished. The thick black clouds scattered with it, revealing a bright red sun. Blazing and radiant sunlight sprinkled down, illuminating Ban-Bu's body. His back was straight and loud banging sounds constantly emitted from his body. His entire person rapidly became younger, and the strength that had been sealed away for a long time was finally returning to him. "Fellow Taoist Bai, regarding your previous proposal, once I complete Senior's instructions, I will go look for you. Farewell." Ban-Bu took a step forwards. There was a heaven-shaking rumble. The vast strength of the world gathered, condensing into a sword beneath his feet. Chapter 895. Teacher. Several disciples said with trembling voices. Their eyes were filled with excitement as well as endless awe and longing. Their faces flushed red. Bai Tsongyue took a deep breath. What happened today cannot be mentioned to anyone. Within his sleeves, his hands constantly trembled. Although he forcefully maintained a calm expression, his heart was already filled with emotions. This mister was absolutely the most transcendent powerhouse he had ever seen in his life. If he could, a trace of excitement flashed in his eyes. Bai Tsongyue steeled his resolve. In truth, Bai Tsongyue's actions of ordering the disciples to keep their mouths shut were a bit unnecessary. This was because they weren't the only ones who had witnessed the changes on the street. Ban-Bu's movement of regaining his freedom had been far too great. In just a short period of time, news spread throughout Riverwater City and continued to spread outwards at an astonishing speed. That shameless old man on everlasting South Street was actually a powerhouse with a transcendent swordsmanship. Although he hadn't done anything, he had been able to shatter the rain with a single thought and form a divine sword to pierce through space. This supernatural ability was enough to shake the hearts of all. Many of the cultivators in the city that had mocked and even maliciously teased Banbu now paled. They couldn't help but wonder if it was too late to move now. But right now, no one had the mind to care about what they were thinking. After everyone recovered from their shock and disbelief, they realized something. There was a peerless powerhouse lingering outside Riverwater City, and it seemed he wouldn't leave for some time. Could this be an opportunity? Soon, 800 miles outside the city, a common-looking hill was found. The aura there was isolated from the outside world, and it formed its own little world. No matter how the sun and moon revolved, it wouldn't be disturbed in the least. Everyone who saw this mountain would instinctively feel fear and boundless reverence. At this moment, there was no longer any doubt. Countless thoughts raced through everyone's hearts. Like waves slowly rising beneath the surface of a lake, they were just waiting for a turning point to erupt. Outside the city, on Object Beyond Mountain, Chinyu had a calm expression. I've done everything I can. Now, all I need to do is wait patiently. He had used 3 seconds to come up with the name of the mountain. After all, he needed a profound name in order to match his current status. Across from him, Xiang Shue's eyes were sharp. She looked up and down. Chinyu, I never thought your acting skills would be so amazing. I apologize for my disrespect. Chinyu glanced at her. Speak human language. Xiang Shui giggled and moved her head closer. I'm just curious about how you're going to act after such a perfect start. Don't be careless and mess up the entire show. Otherwise, you'll end up in a miserable state. Qin Yu's expression was calm. That's my problem. You just need to play your role well. Xiang Shui patted her chest. Don't worry about that. I've been an opium for so many years. I would have been killed a long time ago if my acting skills weren't up to standard. Qin Yu glanced at her. Because of her movements, she was tumbling up and down. He coughed and stood up. I'm going to make my preparations. He took a step and left. Looking at his back, Xiang Shui narrowed her eyes. This kid's tricks are getting more and more difficult to figure out. I really want to see what tricks he's playing. What she didn't know was that Qin Yu had already used similar methods in the past. Now he could do all of this with ease. Of course, in this world, only Qin Yu could use such a method. If it were anyone else, they would definitely die a miserable death. That's right. On the day of the heavy rain at Riverwater City, the black-robed person who rescued Banbu was Qin Yu. Now, the opening was even more perfect than he had imagined. As long as he was a bit more careful, it would be a beautiful harvest season. Of course, taking a step back, even if something went wrong, Qin Yu would still be prepared and able to escape unscathed. 10,000 miles away in Rock City, the city lord who wielded all authority received a report at the fastest speed possible. At first he didn't care, but as he swept his eyes over it, a dignified expression appeared on his face. Lei Qianjun frowned and thought for a moment. Then he rapped the table. With several light sounds, the door to the study was pushed open from the outside. The steward walked in. He respectfully said, "What are your orders?" Lei Qianjun put down the jade slip. "Take a look first." The steward was a true confidant. Without hesitation, he stepped forward and probed the jade slip with his divine sense. After putting it down, a dignified expression appeared on his face. If things were really as described in the jade slip, then that mysterious cultivator from Object Realm Mountain really couldn't be underestimated. He thought for a moment and said, "I'll go take a look." The city lord nodded. The steward closed the door and left. He looked up at the skies, his complexion even heavier than before. Why would such a powerhouse appear in Rock City's territory without any warning? Why did he come and what was his goal? If it really was to rescue that sword maniac from Riverwater City, then he had already achieved his goal. So why did he stay? Could it be that he really wanted to obtain the agreed fee from that sword maniac? The steward frowned. Anyone who believed this would be a true idiot. Without stopping, the steward gave some instructions and then left Rock City. After leaving the range of the city, the steward shot into the skies. A dazzling light flashed, and a great eagle covered in golden feathers howled into the distance, vanishing from sight in the blink of an eye. Everyone had their own secrets. If one didn't see it with their own eyes, who would believe that the reserved and low-key steward that always followed the city lord was actually a terrifyingly strong golden feather great monster? In fact, the steward wasn't the only one who wanted to explore Object Realm Mountain and the unknown cultivator's secrets. Within the surrounding hundreds of thousands of miles, besides the Rock City Lord, there were several others that weren't weak and only submitted to him on the surface. This was a normal situation. If Lei Qianjun really managed the massive Rock City territory into a solid monolith, the royal family wouldn't have been able to sit still long ago. How could they have allowed him to roam freely for so many years? There were some things that everyone was well aware of. Only by keeping everything within the bounds of the rules could everyone live comfortably. Shua, the golden feather great eagle, transformed into the steward. When it landed on Object Realm Mountain, several eyes gathered on it. After a moment of hesitation, it stepped forwards and greeted him. Brother Jean. What does the city lord mean? Just what is this person's background? The steward smiled in return. The city lord is busy, so he ordered me to investigate on his behalf. He brushed off everyone's questions in a perfunctory manner. Everyone cursed him for being a sly old fox. Seeing that they couldn't find out anything, they continued to speak for a while before scattering. The steward stood outside the mountain for an entire day and night, experiencing the process of sunrise and sunset. As he looked at Object Realm Mountain, his eyes became increasingly dignified. Yin and Yang impervious. It really was Yin and Yang impervious. The steward let out a deep breath. He bid farewell to the several people that spoke to him and then turned to leave. He had seen what he needed to see. There was no need to stay any longer. Upon returning to the City Lord Mansion, the first thing he said was, "If he isn't an enemy, try not to provoke that cultivator in Object Realm Mountain." Lei Qianjuan's expression didn't change. "Tell me, what did you discover?" The steward said, "I saw a great deal, but there was even more that I couldn't see. So, what I see now might not be the truth, so there's nothing to say." Lei Qianjun laid down the book in his hands and sighed. "If you can be so cautious that you don't even dare to say a single word, it seems he really is extraordinary." The steward said, "I was afraid that if I said anything wrong, you would misjudge him." Lei Qianjun asked, "What do the other families say?" "They want to give it a try." Lei Qianjun raised an eyebrow. "They have a target?" The steward nodded. "Then let's wait and see. After all, in this world, there are many things that can't be seen with one's eyes. Only when the facts are present can one believe them. I understand. I will secretly add some chips so that he can make up his mind faster." The steward's chips were soon in place. Yun Songyue, who was hesitating in Riverwater City, coincidentally met an enemy from years ago. What was even more coincidental was that the enemy had also condensed a divine seal and was slightly stronger than him. The battle between the two divine realm experts didn't involve Riverwater City. When Yun Songyue forced himself to return to his residence, he spat out a few mouthfuls of blood and his face was pale. He waved his hand to stop the panicking disciples from approaching. He sat down and regulated his breathing for a while before he managed to stabilize his internal injuries. "Teacher, how are you?" a favored disciple asked nervously. Yun Songyue sighed and murmured, "I knew that I had become a target, but I didn't expect them to be so impatient. It seems that the person in Beyond Objects Mountain has already made them feel apprehensive." He stood up and walked out. I can't wait any longer. Otherwise, who knows what will happen next. You all stay here. If I don't return in 3 days, then go home. This matter shouldn't involve you." Without giving the disciples a chance to ask, Yun Songyue left his residence and silently walked out of the city. When he left, the news had already spread. All eyes gathered on him at the same time. They all wanted to know which direction this matter would develop in. Even though he was injured, the divine realm was still the divine realm. Yun Songyue didn't spend too much time before he arrived outside Beyond Objects Mountain. He raised his head and looked at the stone tablet erected outside the mountain. Beyond Objects Mountain. No one is allowed to enter without permission. These words were very ordinary, but the more one looked at them, the more one could feel an indescribable pressure from them. It was as if a pair of eyes had appeared from the 9 heavens and was quietly watching you. Yun Songyue could clearly feel this pressure. If he had a choice, he definitely wouldn't be so presumptuous, but it was obvious that he didn't have a choice. Clenching his teeth, Yun Songyue took a deep breath and stepped into Beyond Objects Mountain. In the open and in the dark, countless cultivators widened their eyes at this moment. But what happened next greatly disappointed them. As if he had passed through a layer of illusion, the air rippled. Yun Songyue's figure actually disappeared with one step. He went in, and then everything returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. What did this mean? Some people were burning with anxiety, some people were calm. But no matter what, after a short period of restlessness, everyone chose to remain silent. The stones had been thrown out. Even though they couldn't see it, they still had to leave some time for the follow-up reaction. Chapter 896. The moment he took his first step into Objects Beyond Mountain, Yun Songyue felt that he was definitely going to die. He was like a little bug that was wrapped in amber, losing all freedom in an instant. An unimaginable pressure gathered from all directions. As time passed, it continued to grow stronger. If this continued, Yun Songyue did not doubt that he would explode into countless pieces with a bang. He wanted to struggle, but he could not move. He could not even make a sound. His heart was filled with bitterness and endless sorrow. Thinking about it, to the powerful existence in Objects Beyond Mountain, he was just an insignificant little bug that could not attract the others' attention. Even if he died here, no one would know. The pressure grew stronger and stronger. Breathing became more difficult. Yun Songyue could clearly feel the groans of his flesh and internal organs. Even though he could not see his appearance, it was not hard to guess that his eyeballs were red and protruding from blood. At a certain moment, they would rupture from the inside and blood would splatter out. That scene would definitely be very tragic. This feeling of helplessness, of being unable to do anything, of only waiting for death to arrive, was extremely torturous. Even with Yun Songyue's strong willpower, he could not help but tremble. Fear grew like a shadow that drilled out from the bottom of his heart and spread throughout his body. Was he going to die like this? While his consciousness was in a trance, Yun Songyue seemed to hear a soft sound of surprise. Then the terrifying pressure around him relaxed a little. Like a fish on the brink of death that was suddenly thrown into a basin of water, Yun Songyue gasped for air, not daring to waste any time. He shouted with all his might, "Senior, spare me, spare me!" "Who are you?" The old voice sounded beside his ear. Yun Songyue did not have any extravagant hopes that he would be remembered. After all, to such a powerful existence, perhaps he was no different from a rock or a piece of rotten wood by the roadside. Yesterday in Water River City, Senior saved fellow Taoist Bamboo. So what? Can't you see the stone tablet outside the mountain? The old voice seemed calm, but Yun Songyue broke out in cold sweat. He knew that he did not have much time. If he could not change Elder's mind, he would not be able to escape death. His thoughts turned quickly. Yun Songyue clenched his teeth and said loudly, "I barged in today because I want to make a deal with you, Senior. You, Junior has suffered extremely heavy injuries, and I'm afraid I won't be able to live for long. If I can ask Senior for help, I might still have a chance of survival. Of course, it was I who was in the wrong today. Even if Senior were to kill me, I would not have a single word of complaint. But in this way, you won't get anything and will only waste your time and energy. The old voice sneered. You think you're a smart kid. Did you hear the conversation between this old man and Banbo? Do you really think that I won't kill you? Yun Songyue was sweating profusely. He smiled bitterly and said, I have no choice. I can only bet on my luck. Using one's character to bet one's life. Interesting. The old voice paused for a moment. That's fine. In this old man's life, I've never done anything for nothing. I can't break the rules when it comes to you. Your situation is indeed not very good. You forcefully broke through to the immortal realm and left a hidden danger in your foundation. Is this what you want me to do? Yun Songyue was overjoyed. He fiercely looked up. Yes. The heavens would never bar one's way. The heavens would never bar one's way. At this moment, the situation had reversed. If it weren't for his strong self-control, he would have cried out loud. Looking at the current situation, not only would he not die, but he would also be able to remove the great danger in his body. As for whether or not the master of Beyond Objects Mountain could do this, in truth, Yun Songyue didn't doubt it at all. What nonsense! In just a few words, the master was able to find the problem in his body. Just this method alone was amazing. If this kind of master wasn't worth trusting, then why didn't he find someone more trustworthy? Deal, boy, remember to give up resisting. Don't look for trouble for yourself. Yun Songyue quickly restrained his strength. Then his vision turned black and his consciousness fell into darkness. A dignified immortal realm cultivator is considered a master no matter where he goes. Yet he was so easily tricked by you. Xiang Shui had a face full of emotion. Tell me, if he wakes up now, will he fight you to the death, or will he slap himself to death out of shame? Qin Yu looked at her. Don't be so sarcastic. If something really happens, you won't be able to escape. Xiang Shui's eyes rolled back in her head. Qin, you didn't give her a chance to regain her face. With a thought, an invisible strength lifted Yun Songyue up, and he turned to enter the thatched hut. As soon as the door closed, the aura inside and outside was isolated. Xiang Shui's eyes widened, but she couldn't sense any fluctuations from within. She clenched her teeth. Stop playing tricks. This fellow's injuries aren't so simple. I want to see just what methods you have. In the thatched hut, Qin Yu rubbed his chin. Borrowing the strength of the jade egg to find out what was wrong with Yun Songyue's body was a simple matter. But to cure him wasn't simple at all. So, the one who was going to make a move today wasn't Qin Yu. He lifted his hand and opened his fingers. Qin Yu closed his eyes. After several breaths of time, the space between his fingers collapsed inwards without warning, revealing darkness. The shadow of a sun appeared in this darkness. The light was imprisoned by the darkness, not emitting the slightest bit of it. The reason Qin Yu encountered a problem of his soul carrying capacity being insufficient was absolutely related to the little blue lamp, so it was natural for him to order him around. You said that I only need to be responsible for bringing him here and leave the rest to you. So, it's time for you to make a move. Qin Yu drew back to the side. The shadow of the sun trembled, and a thought fluctuation sounded out in his mind. Since I promised you, I will naturally do it. But before that, I need you to use the sun-moon force field to wrap around this space. Qin Yu nodded. With a thought, the sun-moon force field spread out, covering the entire thatched hut. Although it isn't perfect, it is indeed at a level that transcends the mortal world. Looking at Qin Yu in front of him, the little blue lamp was filled with emotion. Sometimes, even he had the impulse to grab this boy and dissect him to see just how he could possess such an astonishing destiny. In the boundless universe, there were trillions of lives and countless individuals with extraordinary talent. After experiencing endless years, great waves would finally emerge, Each and every one of them was like a great sun, a towering existence that illuminated the highest heavens. But of these existences, just how many of them could truly transcend the mortal world? If they knew that a little fellow that hadn't even crossed the threshold of the divinity realm already had such qualifications, they would likely curse out loud at the damned heavens. Then they would slaughter their way over and use every method at their disposal to steal this strength. That scene would surely be fiery to the extreme. Chinyu, although you should have already thought of what I said, I still have to remind you not to tell anyone about the sun-moon force field in the future. Otherwise, the consequences will not be something you want to face. Chinyu nodded. Don't worry, I have experience with this. The little blue lamp was stunned for a moment. Then he bitterly smiled. Others might not even encounter something like this once in their entire lives. Qin, you actually used the word experience. Perhaps when he was inexplicably chosen in the past, it was all predestined. Suppressing these thoughts, the little blue lamp didn't speak further. In the darkness formed by the collapse of space, the shadow of the sun trembled. Faint traces of blue light flew out, fusing into Yun, Songyue's body. After a moment, the shadow of the sun returned to tranquility. All right, Qin Yu frowned. He looked at the unconscious Yun, Songyue on the ground. That's it, the little blue lamp lightly said. Open up the hidden dangers in his body and you will naturally know. Shwa. The shadow of the sun vanished from sight. Space immediately returned to normal. Qin Yu thought for a moment. The little blue lamp had no reason to harm him. He lifted a hand and pointed a finger. The unconscious Yin, Songyue on the ground, instantly shrank into a ball, his face distorted. This seemingly simple finger had struck a critical point, causing the hidden dangers that he had suppressed to erupt. Strength violently shook, like an erupting volcano. If he wasn't disturbed, he would immediately turn into a super invincible firecracker. At this time, motes of blue light lit up within Yun, Songyue's body. They were like stars hanging in the skies, resonating with each other. Faint traces of strength rapidly condensed from nothingness. They wove together to form a white cocoon that wrapped around his entire body. The violent, chaotic, and shaking aura rapidly calmed down, finally returning to a peaceful state. A dark golden light surged in Qin Yu's eyes. It pierced through the cocoon and fell onto Yun, Songyue's body. A look of praise gradually appeared on his face. This fellow, the little blue lamp, was truly mysterious and unfathomable. This was the first time he had seen its ability to save someone. He pushed open the door and met Xiang Shue's gaze. Qin Yu's expression was indifferent. When he wakes up, let him leave. As for the reward, let him consider it himself. Xiang Shue's eyes widened. Are you joking? Just how long had it been, and he had been cured? Menggui. 1 day later, Yun Songyue forcefully suppressed his excitement. With endless shock and awe in his heart, he left things beyond mountain. He turned his head and looked at this small mountain that stood between the heavens and earth, unaffected by the sun, moon, yin and yang. In his eyes, it was as if he had seen the highest belief in his life. My name is Yun Songyue. I have had a hard life since I was young, but I had a dream. I persisted, and my dream finally came true. That's right, I have opened my own path, and I have 3 of them. I have broken through the limits of life and become a formidable divine realm existence. Although I appear calm on the surface, the truth is that I am only faking it. On nights when no one is around, I have shouted out loud more than once. Cough, of course. I have made preparations ahead of time, so no one has discovered this. I have reached the divine realm and obtained the qualifications to build a nunnery. My life is simply perfect. The only thing that isn't perfect is that when I was cultivating in the past because I was too impatient for success, I ended up leaving behind hidden dangers in my foundation. But this isn't anything. I, Yun Songyue, am confident that in the future I can find a way to make up for this. Then, when I hurried on my way, I turned corner and arrived at River Wada City. In the past, there was an old teacher here who gave me pointers. Although his appearance wasn't anything special, my keen intuition told me that he was a master. The facts proved that my guess wasn't wrong. The old teacher was truly fierce and an extraordinary swordsman. But when I discovered this, I was no longer in the mood to praise my keen intuition or feel proud of it. I confirmed that I had been sucked into a whirlpool, so I obediently stayed in Rivawada City, not daring to take half a step out. But the facts proved that as long as you are needed, even if you are sitting at home, trouble will still come knocking on your door. That year, an enemy came knocking on my door, and without saying a word, we fought. I was weak and he was strong. After attacking me fiercely for a while, he turned around and left. Then I understood that I couldn't hide, so I gritted my teeth and entered things beyond mountain. In fact, I have to thank those who forced me and thank those who injured me, because this is definitely the best decision I have made in my life. What is a master? This is the one in things beyond mountain. In the past, there were many people that I respected and admired, but from the moment I stepped out of things beyond mountain, there was only one towering peak left in my heart. Chapter 897. On the third day after entering objects beyond mountain, Yun Tsongyue walked out. To be honest, this speed had already exceeded everyone's expectations. Then, something that shocked them even more clearly appeared in front of them. Yun Tsongyue had recovered. It was not just the injuries he had sustained from being beaten up by his opponent, but also the hidden injuries he had sustained when he broke through to the God realm. These two injuries were not on the same level at all. The difference between them was like the difference between heaven and earth. Everyone's gaze towards objects beyond mountain became even more solemn than before. Vaguely, there was a hint of awe. Experts, no matter where they were, had a status that could not be challenged. And now, they could already confirm that the mysterious existence in objects beyond mountain was a true expert. Everyone wanted to know what had happened in objects beyond mountain and what had happened in these 3 days. Yun Tsongyue was very honest. He seemed to have already expected such a thing. Faced with Xiao Chen's questioning, Xiao Chen straightforwardly spilled out everything that he had experienced. But the result, there seemed to be no difference between saying it and not saying it. The expert in objects beyond mountain was still hidden in the shadows and did not reveal any useful information. Everyone, this is all that I know. With the abilities of that person in the mountain, if he wanted to hide his identity, who could do anything? Yun Tsongyue cupped his hands. After today's encounter, I owe you a great favor. I will be looking for a treasure as repayment. I will take my leave now. He turned and shot into the sky. No one was a fool. They could naturally understand the deeper meaning behind his words. First of all, that person in objects beyond mountain did not seem willing to let others know his true identity. Secondly, the favor that Yun Tsongyue owed was from that person in objects beyond mountain. He was going to find a treasure and offer it as repayment. In other words, it was best that they did not have any designs on him. Otherwise, if they could not find the treasure and hand over the reward, there would definitely be trouble. No one was willing to cause trouble, especially trouble from a top expert. That was not seeking excitement, it was seeking death. Yun Tsongyue successfully escaped. Objects beyond mountain's fame was like a balloon that had been inflated. Then, after another day, Mu Qingyuan appeared outside objects beyond mountain. He was a famous expert of the divine path. Everyone present recognized him. Not letting down everyone's expectant gazes, Mu Qingyuan took a deep breath and stepped into objects beyond mountain. After another 3 days, Mu Qingyuan returned, laughing heartily. She turned and bowed deeply, like a spark falling into a barrel of boiling oil. Raging flames instantly soared to the heavens. The excitement in everyone's hearts were completely ignited at this moment. Their eyes were filled with endless scorching heat as they looked at objects beyond mountain. Lei Qianjun put down the jade slip and gently tapped the table with his fingers. After a moment, he looked up and met the housekeeper's eyes. "It is as you said. That person and object beyond mountains is an extraordinary person. He wasn't too clear about Yun Songyue's situation, but he knew about Mu Qingyuan's problem. The old man had been living a miserable life these past few years. Yet, in just a short 3 days, he had actually been reborn. If he had not confirmed it again and again, he would never have believed it. The butler said, "What are your plans?" Lei Qianjun stood up and straightened his robes. "Such an expert has entered my rock journey weave. As the city lord, it would be rude of me not to pay my respects." The butler bowed. "You are right." However, there was a hint of worry in his eyes. Lei Qianjun smiled. They might not necessarily be enemies. They might even be friends. There was another sentence he didn't say. He couldn't avoid what he had to face, so it was better to do it sooner rather than later. With one step, he left his study. With the second step, he left his mansion. With the third step, he left Rock City. When his fourth step landed, he had arrived at objects beyond mountains. The countless cultivators outside the mountains all heard the heaven-shaking roar that came from beyond the highest heavens. This momentum was like the descent of a star, looking down on all directions. Rock City Lord Lei Qianjun. It's actually him. As expected, this person can't sit still either. With a flick of his sleeves, he scattered the vast strength around him. Wild winds rose between the heavens and earth, rumbling in all directions. But Lei Qianjuan's next actions left many people secretly disappointed. He landed on the ground, cupped his hands together, and smiled. "Rock City, Lord Lei Qianjun, I didn't know you were coming. If I have been rude in any way, I hope you are magnanimous enough to forgive me." After several breaths of time, objects beyond mountains flashed. Xiang Shui stepped out and bowed. "Greetings, Rock City Lord. My master is currently cultivating and can't leave for the time being. He ordered me to pass on a message that he will only be staying for a short period of time and will leave in a few days. He has no intention of disturbing the city lord." Lei Qianjun laughed. "If that's the case, then I won't bother you any longer. If you change your mind in the future, the city lord's mansion will welcome you with open arms." He turned around, stepped out, and disappeared into the distance in an instant. At this moment, no matter which side it was, all cultivators couldn't help but praise Lei Qianjun in their hearts. He was truly a character, although he had only shown his face once. Just this appearance alone was enough to suppress everyone else. Outside the mountains, several groups of cultivators in the crowd furrowed their brows and pondered for a long time. Then, they all bitterly smiled and suppressed their thoughts. Since that person in the mountains had no intention of making things difficult for Lei Qianjun, they couldn't use this opportunity to make a big fuss. Now that both sides had expressed their stance, it was fine if they tactfully retreated. But if they continued to tangle with him, they feared that a disaster would befall them in the blink of an eye. Did they really think that the smiling and carefree Lei Qianjun from before was someone with a heart that wouldn't be stained by blood? In the past, in order to obtain the position of city lord, he had killed so many people that their heads had piled up into a mountain, and the blood that had accumulated could form a sea. Everyone sighed with emotion. He had only shown his face once, but he had erased countless storms and saved Rock City from an upheaval. This Lei Qianjun really couldn't be underestimated. After returning to object beyond mountain, Xiang Shui patted her chest, her face full of resentment. "In the future, you should ask someone else to do this sort of thing. The pressure is just too great." Lei Qianjuan's tone was gentle and his smile was unceasing. But just by standing there, he was like a divine mountain that supported the heavens, inspiring awe and fear in others. This was a true powerhouse. Perhaps he was slightly weaker than the dragon overlord, but if he risked his life, he could still turn the heavens and earth upside down. Otherwise, how could he have become the city lord of Rock City and ruled over hundreds of thousands of miles? How could he have become one of the overlords of the world that even the royal family secretly feared? Xiang Shui was at the divine realm and her strength wasn't bad. But compared to him, the difference was far too great. They weren't on the same level at all. Looking at Qin Yu's calm expression, even though her heart was still pounding and her discontent was still tumbling, Xiang Shui still couldn't help but admire his courage. How could he dare to pretend to be a big shot here? Wasn't he afraid of making a mistake and getting himself killed? Qin Yu heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. The situation was better than he had expected. If Lei Qianjun had tried to probe him, he would have been in big trouble. But he didn't reveal these emotions. He smiled faintly and said, Lei Qianjun made this trip to increase his reputation and suppress the surging waves in the dark. It's not like we didn't gain anything. From today onwards, Object Beyond Mountain's transcendent position has been set. No one will dare to question it anymore. Regardless of whether it was true or false, with the city lord's endorsement, this was the truth. In the study, a few figures sat in silence. The atmosphere was heavy. After a long time, one of them let out a long sigh. Consider Lei Qianjun lucky this time. It's not luck. I always thought that his achievements today were because he was a step ahead of us in his early years. Today, it seems that the city lord is indeed a wonderful person. Humph. So what if he's a wonderful person? Anyone who blocks our path will only end in destruction. The person drinking tea at the master's seat behind the study table put down his teacup. With a light paw sound, the study immediately quieted down. I'm tired. Shu Hang, stay behind. You can all leave. Everyone stood up and bowed. Most of them secretly glanced at the young man standing respectfully beside the table, their eyes filled with hatred and jealousy. The door opened and closed. Behind the table, Wu Zuqing sighed. He revealed a tired expression and softly said, They've all left. Shu Hang, there is no need to stand on ceremony. Sit. Thank you, Patriarch. Shu Hang turned around and sat down. His back was still ramrod straight, and he slightly lowered his head to show his respect. This was indeed a good opportunity. Unfortunately, before we could act, Lei Qianjun took drastic measures and cut off the source of our troubles. Wu Zuqing patted the armrest. He still handles matters as decisively as he did in the past, and his luck is truly good. Shu Hang said, Patriarch, I actually think that this isn't a bad result for us. Oh, the background of the cultivator in Object Beyond Mountain is still unknown. No one knows where he came from. If we borrow his hand to shake Rock City's position, we might be able to obtain some benefits for a while. But in the end, it might not be as we wish, and there might even be other troubles. Wu Zuqing pondered for a moment and slowly nodded. What you say isn't unreasonable. Forget it. The chess pieces have already been placed anyway. It's just a few years earlier or a few years later. With a bit more buffer time, we can be more prepared. His eyes narrowed, revealing a sharp light. How much time do you think we have? Shu Hang said, 10 years at most, 5 years at least. Patriarch will be able to accomplish his greatest wish in one go. Lei Xiaoyu sat in front of the window, sulking. The more she didn't want to think about it, the more she couldn't shake off the image of that bad fellow. The more she sat, the angrier she became. The scenery in front of her caused her to become irritated. She slammed the window shut and threw herself onto the bed, hugging the pillow as she rolled around. Scoundrel! Stinky bastard! Bastard! Lei Xiaoyu jumped up and screamed at the top of her lungs. Don't let me see you again, or I'll make you pay! Ah! The two maids, standing guard outside the building, glanced at each other helplessly. The young miss had really gone crazy recently. They were also curious. Just what kind of man was he that the young miss couldn't forget about him? As they were thinking, there was the sound of footsteps. The two maids looked up and smiled. Big Sister Qingrong, you came just in time. The young miss is in a fit of anger, and we don't dare to go in. We are waiting for you to rescue us. Qingrong glared at them. You are the smart ones. Who doesn't know that Big Sister is the most spoiled? The young miss has grown up with you, but she has never treated you as a servant," the maid said as she pushed open the door. Ching Rong paused for a moment. Then she smiled. "I'm not in the mood to talk nonsense with you. The kitchen has just finished cooking some longevity porridge. I will send it in while it's hot and watch the young miss finish it." She stepped into the building. She glanced around the familiar environment and rolled her eyes several times. Then she walked up the stairs. She turned around the exquisite and gorgeous staircase and lifted the jade bead curtain. Ching Rong looked up, revealing a wide smile. "Miss, it's time for you to drink the porridge." The young miss of the City Lord Mansion had a weak body since she was a child. She needed to cook longevity porridge with precious ingredients to slowly nourish her body. This was a matter that everyone in the mansion knew about. This should have been a common occurrence day after day. But no one knew that the kitchen maid who had carefully prepared this porridge was now freshening up and smiling at herself in the mirror. Then she tilted her head back and drank the poison in the bottle. This poison was colorless and tasteless. A single drop was enough to become a marquis. "Pa!" The clear white jade bowl fell to the ground and rolled into the distance. Lei Xiaoyu clutched her aching stomach, her eyebrows tightly furrowed together. "Why?" Ching Rong said in a soft voice. "Because many years ago, all of my loved ones died under your father's hands. The youngest was my little brother, who was less than 3 months old. Because of the words, 'cut the weeds by the roots,' his little body was pierced through by a spear. Does the young miss know of these matters? What you don't know is that I witnessed this scene with my own eyes in the past, and I have never forgotten it." Lei Xiaoyu began to vomit blood, small mouthfuls at a time. The blood was pitch black, but strangely emitted a sweet fragrance. As it fell to the ground, it automatically shrank, condensing into black beads. They were like black pearls that could be found in the deep sea, each one reflecting her pale face. "I sympathize with your experience, but I will not apologize if my father didn't kill. He would have been killed. If so, then everything you experienced might have been my experience." Ching Rong nodded. "Of course, the young miss does not need to apologize, and I do not need your apologies. To be able to accompany you to the Yellow Springs is already enough for me." Bang! The window instantly shattered. Wooden fragments howled out, filled with a terrifying strength. They instantly pierced through Ching Rong's body, turning her into countless pieces. The steward fell to the ground, his complexion pale. Lei Xiaoyu squeezed out a smile. "Uncle Jean!" She fell backwards, falling unconscious. Chapter 898. Lei Qianjuan's complexion paled. His eyes narrowed as if he were an iron statue. Although he didn't say a single word, everyone could feel the tumbling brutality in his chest. The air seemed to be filled with the scent of blood, causing one's mind to tremble. The butler had a heavy expression. He bowed. "It was my lack of consideration that caused something to happen to the miss. City Lord, please punish me." Lei Qianjun glanced at him, not speaking. At this time, the door was pushed open from within, and the ruddy Gu, Yan Yuan, walked out with a medicine box on his back. He met Lei Qianjuan's eyes and gently shook his head. "City Lord, your daughter's old illness has yet to recover, and today she has been attacked by a strange poison. There is nothing I can do to save her. Please forgive me for being powerless." The butler trembled. Blood flowed out from his nose and mouth, and his complexion paled. Drip, drip, beads of blood fell to the ground, seeming to weigh tens of thousands of pounds. They smashed through the ground, leaving behind circular holes. Lei Qianjun was silent for several breaths of time. He slowly said, "Mr. Gu is a divine doctor and has the ability to revive the dead. I believe that Mr. will definitely find a way to save my daughter. If my daughter can survive this calamity, I will surely offer generous gifts to thank Mr. for your great kindness." Gu Yenyuan looked at the butler and his eyebrows trembled. He took a deep breath and bowed. "Since the city lord thinks so highly of me, I will try again. But this method is a bit dangerous and I am not sure how effective it will be. Lei Qianjun cupped his hands together. I'll have to trouble mister. Half a day later, Guiyuan's complexion was deathly pale. He walked out of his room once more. His face was covered in wrinkles and dark spots, and it was filled with the aura of decay. The miss will be fine for 10 days. After saying this, Mr. Gu, who was renowned for his divine medical skills, was helped away. He had already done his best, and had even paid the price of several hundred years of his life. To use several hundred years to save 10 days of life, if it weren't for the City Lord Mansion's strength and status, it would have been impossible. Lei Qianjun stood up without expression. He dismissed all the maids and stood in front of the bed, looking at his daughter's pale complexion, his eyebrows slowly furrowed, like a folded mountain range. He revealed an endless heaviness. After a long time, he let out a breath and said in a soft voice, "Xiaoyu, don't be afraid. Father won't let you go. I will definitely save you." He turned around and walked out the door, glancing at the housekeeper who was still weeping blood. "Send a message to the 13 city lords. Rock City is willing to show our sincerity to anyone who can save Xiaoyu's life." The steward turned and left. Moments later, the news spread in all directions. The 13 city lords of Rock City all received the message. Some were worried, some were happy, and some were eager to try. But no matter what their true intentions were, not long after they received the letter from Pengcheng City, a group of people from each of the 13 cities rushed to Pengcheng City with solemn expressions. Inside the flood dragon carriage, Wu Zuqing frowned slightly as countless thoughts flashed through his mind. He had already ascertained that the assassination attempt on Lei Xiaoyu was not a trap set up by Shenzhen City. Who did this? The other party must have sent something. Otherwise, they wouldn't have used Lei Xiaoyu as a breakthrough point. After all, no matter how noble her identity was, she was still just a daughter. She was far from qualified to become the new ruler of Pengcheng City. He hated this kind of passive situation where everything was out of his control. Xu Hang, who was standing opposite him, hesitated for a moment before slowly saying, "Patriarch, no matter what the goal of the person behind this is, we need to prepare ahead of time." Wu Zuqing's eyes flashed and he nodded. "I know what to do. If Lei Xiaoyu really died, time would be tight." Fortunately, they weren't prepared, and Pengcheng City was also caught off guard. However, with another force in the dark, they had to be more cautious. Otherwise, if they weren't careful, they would fall into a trap. Soon, Pengcheng City came into sight. After confirming their identities, the flood dragon carriage flew straight to the city lord's residence. "Greetings, Patriarch Wu. The city lord is waiting. Please follow me." A lay family expert cupped his hands and bowed before turning around to lead the way. When Wu Zuqing arrived, most of the representatives from the 13 families had already arrived. Now wasn't the time to talk, so they sat down after exchanging greetings. However, they couldn't help but look at each other inquisitively. Although they didn't know who the mastermind behind the assassination attempt on the city lord's daughter was, it must be related to everyone present. While everyone was deep in thought, time passed and the representatives from the 13 families arrived. "The city lord has arrived." Everyone stood up one after another, solemnly bowing. "Greetings, city lord." Lei Qianjuan's expression was calm. "Today, I have troubled all my colleagues to come here because of my daughter. It is indeed a bit rude. After this matter is over, I will definitely find an opportunity to apologize to all of you. The city lord is too serious. We have watched Xiaoyu grow up and are all her elders. Even if the city lord didn't summon us, we would still have come to visit. For something like this to happen, all of us are furious. We will do our best to assist the city lord and find the true culprit." Lei Qianjun nodded slightly at everyone's expressions. Everyone is thoughtful. It won't be too late to apprehend the culprit later. My daughter's situation is critical, so I won't beat around the bush. His eyes swept over everyone present. Mr. Gu Yenyuan has taken action and temporarily stabilized Xiaoyu's situation. I wonder if anyone here can help my daughter? As I said in my previous letter, I am willing to pay sufficient compensation. I will not disappoint you. Everyone was mentally prepared. Moreover, how could they refuse Lei Qianjun when he had already said this? They entered their rooms one after another, staying for different lengths of time. No one said anything, but when they returned to the outer hall, everyone had grave expressions. Xiaoyu's problem was truly serious. If Lei Qianjun hadn't forced her and Gu Yenyuan hadn't risked his life, she might have already died. Now, she was barely hanging on to her last breath and could die at any moment. Lei Qianjun slowly said, "This is the situation. Everyone has seen it. Do you have any ideas?" Everyone was silent and frowned, unwilling to speak at this moment. If it was something else that could gain Lei Qianjun's favor, they naturally wouldn't mind trying it. However, a life was at stake, and it involved his most beloved daughter. If they weren't careful and helped this girl take her last breath, they would be in deep trouble. Lei Qianjun's gaze slowly swept across everyone. Wu Zuqing's heart trembled slightly, but in the next moment his voice rang out, "Brother Wu, your Wu family has a long history and produced many experts. Your foundation is even deeper than my Peng cities. Do you have any ideas?" What did this mean? What did Lei Qianjun find out? Or was he purposely testing me? How should I respond? Wu Zuqing's thoughts spun rapidly, his mind already tensed up. He knew very well how ruthless the person in front of him was. At this moment, he was calmly asking questions, but in the next moment he might explode and kill someone. Something like this had rarely happened in recent years, but it had happened countless times since Peng City was established. In a breath's time, Wu Zuqing made a decision. He let out a breath and slowly said, "City Lord, an ancestor of the Wu family brought out a treasure from heaven-extinguishing abyss and passed away not long after. Perhaps it can temporarily alleviate Xiaoyu's injuries." When he said this, everyone looked over in surprise. How shrewd was Wu Zuqing? How could he make such a foolish move? Could it be that he didn't know that regardless of whether or not today's matter had anything to do with him, he would definitely be suspected after saying this? To be remembered by Lei Qianjun, even with their status and identity, they would still feel uneasy. Lei Qianjun took a deep breath. "If Brother Wu is willing to use the treasure to save my daughter, you can ask for anything." Wu Zuqing pondered for a moment and said, "I heard that there is a crippling heavenly sword in the city, Lord's secret storehouse. Is that true?" Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. No matter how they looked at the situation today, something big was about to happen. Who didn't know that the Wu family had been collecting the crippling, heavenly swords for generations? Now, they only lacked one more to complete the collection. The city lord had collected this item to suppress the Wu family and limit their strength. Now that he was asking for it in front of them, anyone would think that the Wu family was the one who attacked Lei Xiaoyu and used this opportunity to blackmail them. Oh, no, if it really was the Wu family, they wouldn't do things so crudely. Could it be that Wu Zuqing wanted to use this method to tell Lei Qianjun that this matter had nothing to do with them? The more everyone thought about it, the more likely it was. They all cursed inwardly. Wu Zuqing was indeed a shrewd and astute person. No matter how much Lei Xiaoyu was doted on, she was only a daughter. It wasn't that she had no value, but compared to the Wu family, she was clearly not on the same level. One had to know that a complete, crippling, heavenly sword was completely different from a missing one. No one thought that Lei Qianjun would give the Wu family a chance to become stronger for his daughter. However, the development of the situation exceeded everyone's expectations. Lei Qianjun only pondered for a moment before he said resolutely, "The crippling heavenly sword is indeed in Peng City's secret storehouse. I will order someone to retrieve it immediately." At this moment, even Wu Zuqing, who had made the request, was stunned for a second, not to mention the others. He almost suspected that he was hallucinating. Lei Qianjun agreed? He actually agreed? Was he crazy? Or had the world changed? Wu Zuqing only confirmed that everything was real when the housekeeper personally handed him the sword box that contained the crippling, heavenly sword. He didn't need to open it. Just by sensing it, he could confirm that the sword box contained the crippling heavenly sword, the last crippling heavenly sword that the Wu family had been searching for almost 1,000 years. At this moment, Wu Zuqing was no longer in the mood to consider Lei Qianjun's motives. He took a deep breath and suppressed his surging emotions. He gripped the sword box tightly with both hands and said in a low voice, "The treasure is in the Wu family's ancestral storehouse. Only I can open it. Don't worry. The Wu family will deliver it to you by tomorrow morning." This was his final test. Lei Qianjun nodded in agreement. The Flood Dragon Imperial carriage left Peng City without any mishaps. Only now did Wu Zuqing truly heave a sigh of relief. He lowered his head and looked at the sword box with a burning gaze. Opposite him, Shu Hang bowed. "Congratulations, Patriarch. Congratulations, Patriarch. You finally obtained the last crippling heavenly sword. You will definitely break through and become an overlord." Ha 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 ha. Wu Zuqing threw his head back and laughed. "I only wanted to use this opportunity to test Lei Qianjun. I didn't expect such a harvest. The heavens are truly on my side. At this point, even if Peng City changed their minds, they wouldn't be able to catch up to them." Chapter 899. Wu Zuqing returned to the Wu clan and immediately summoned the clan's experts. After several tests and confirming that the broken heavenly sword wasn't tampered with, he immediately began to comprehend it. The entire Wu clan was in a joyous mood. Everyone's hearts were filled with longing for a beautiful future. As for the treasure to save Lei Xiaoyu, although the Wu clan did have an ancestor who passed away not long after returning from the heavenly eradicating abyss, he didn't leave behind any treasures. Wu Zuqing only said that to pave the way for his request for the broken heavenly sword. After all, although the broken heavenly sword is precious, it's a treasure exchanged with the life of an ancestor of the Wu clan. Both sides are barely equal, so it won't seem like they're asking for too much and purposely making things difficult for Peng City. Wu Zuqing had never imagined that Lei Qianjun would agree without the slightest hesitation. However, he didn't panic because of this. Although the Wu clan didn't have a life-saving treasure, it was still possible to keep Lei Xiaoyu alive for a while. The next morning, a Wu clan expert rushed to Peng City and entered the room alone to treat Lei Xiaoyu. After 2 hours, he left. Lei Xiaoyu had already woken up. "Father." She used up all her strength with just one word. Lei Xiaoyu could only force a smile. Lei Qianjun bent down to wipe her tears. "It's good that you're awake. I'm here for everything. You just need to rest." Lei Xiaoyu nodded. She was exhausted and closed her eyes for a while before falling into a deep sleep. Lei Qianjun quietly looked at her for a while, then turned around. "Has Mr. Gu arrived?" The housekeeper replied, "I've already sent someone to invite him." A youth who resembled Lei Qianjun hesitated. "I heard that Mr. Gu's injuries are extremely severe and he hasn't slept for days. I'm afraid." Lei Qianjun glanced at him and said indifferently he will come. The youth's heart trembled. He hurriedly lowered his head and didn't dare to speak again. Gu Yenyuan finally came. He gritted his teeth so hard that they almost broke. However, the situation was against his will, so he had to force a smile. "Congratulations, City Lord. Mrs. Injuries have basically stabilized. I can't guarantee anything more, but it should be fine for a year or so." After ordering people to send Gu Yenyuan off, Lei Qianjun glanced at his eldest son and slowly said, "I will be leaving for a period of time in the near future. During this period, you will be in charge of Peng City on my behalf. If you are unable to make a decision, you can discuss it with the uncles in the clan." Lei Jinyun's eyes widened. Although he knew he shouldn't reveal any happiness in this situation, he still found it hard to suppress the excitement in his heart. He bowed. "Father, rest assured that your son will be careful and not let you down." A trace of disappointment appeared in Lei Qianjuan's eyes as he watched him leave with light footsteps. He turned to look at the housekeeper and said, "This son of mine has great ambitions but little talent. He might be able to defend the city, but how can he protect the great foundation of Pengcheng City with just the word defend?" It was fine to listen to this kind of topic, but the butler would not say a word more. Lei Qianjun obviously didn't need it either. The housekeeper was discussing this matter with him. His eyes flickered slightly as he said, "In 2 days, when Xiao Yu's condition has improved a little, you will follow me and bring her to Beyond Objects Mountain. Since there are people who are so eager for me to go, I will naturally not disappoint them." The butler bowed. Yes. 2 days later, Lei Qianjun announced that he was going into seclusion and secretly left Pengcheng City with his people, heading to Beyond Objects Mountain. But less than an hour after he left, this news had already spread through secret channels. For a time, there were some ripples in the dark. The news that Lei Xiaoyu had been assassinated and nearly lost her life on the spot had already spread throughout the 13 cities. Those who had the qualifications to know about this could guess Lei Qianjuan's goal. If he hadn't used the crippling heavenly sword as the price to exchange for the Wu family's help, perhaps everyone would have guessed that there was some sort of trick involved. But now, with the perfect foundation laid, they could only sigh inwardly. Lei Qianjun truly loved this daughter of his to the extreme. The focus shifted to Beyond Objects Mountain. Everyone wanted to know what was going to happen next. Would the mysterious existence in Beyond Objects Mountain really save her? After all, even Gu Yenyuan had said that Lei Xiaoyu's injuries were beyond saving. Even if she had some heaven-defying method, the consumption would definitely be terrifying. If she was rejected, how would Lei Qianjun react? Wu family. After receiving the news that Lei Qianjun had left Peng City, Wu Zuqing immediately realized that this was an excellent opportunity. But he didn't impatiently go into seclusion. Instead, he used various methods to determine Lei Qianjuan's whereabouts. At the same time, the spies he had placed in various parts of Peng City were all activated. Perhaps many of them would be exposed after today, but he couldn't care less now. As he sat in the still thought hall, he received one message after another. Peng City's affairs were now handled by Lei Jinyan. In the 17 cities controlled by the city lord's mansions, all personnel were stable, and there were no signs of mobilizing any forces. In the garrisoned camp outside the city, the soldiers and horses were drilling as usual. Half a day later, Beyond Objects Mountain sent back the latest news. Strong winds suddenly blew, and several figures could be seen flitting past, disappearing into the mountains. Along with the news, there was a jade slit that had a rubbing scene. Strong winds blew, and sand covered the sky. Several figures were faintly discernible. Wu Zuqing carefully looked at it and handed the jade slip to an old man with his eyes closed. "Great uncle, I'll have to trouble you." The old man opened his eyes, his face expressionless. "If we can repair the broken heaven's sword, the Wu family will prosper. I didn't do this for you." He glanced out the window and took the jade slip, placing it between his eyebrows. A moment later, there was a light cracking sound as the jade slip shattered into powder. The old man's body trembled and blood flowed out from his eyes. "It really is Lei Qianjun." As his voice fell, the old man stood up and walked outside. Blood flowed out from his closed eyes. He had already gone blind. Wu Zuqing stood up and bowed. "Farewell, great uncle." As the sound of his footsteps faded away, he stepped forwards and the ground split open, revealing stone steps that led underground. "I will go into seclusion. I only need 3 days to refine the broken heavens sword. During this time, no matter what happens, no one is allowed to disturb me." Qin Yu never imagined that Lei Qianjun would return. With his status and level, this didn't conform to common sense. But now that common sense didn't conform to common sense. Qin Yu couldn't care less. He only knew that if he didn't handle this properly, he would be in deep trouble. I have taken the liberty to visit. I ask that you show yourself. Lei Qianjuan's voice, supported by a formidable strength, constantly reverberated through the air. Xiang Shui paled. Her lips moved, but she didn't say anything. But Qin Yu understood what she meant. Let's hurry and escape. Qin Yu knew that it was impossible for him to use her to brush things off today. Otherwise, he would be exposed before he could say anything. This woman was normally talkative, but she was actually so timid. They had only met once, and yet she was so afraid. Qin Yu wasn't willing to run away like this. He had spent so much effort to put on this play, and now that he was about to reap the harvest, how could he just give up like this? He clenched his teeth and stood up. Follow behind me. I don't need you to say anything today. Just don't let your legs go soft. Xiang Shui hesitated. How about I stay here and wait for you? Qin Yu was so angry that he almost laughed. You are now a maid. If you don't follow me and pour me tea, do you want me to do it myself? Qin Yu wasn't in the mood to bicker with her. He lowered his voice and said, If you want to stay here, that's fine. But if you run far away and I can't take care of you, then good luck. Xiang Shui didn't speak any more nonsense. With a thought, a black robe automatically appeared, covering his entire body. Qin Yu suppressed all his thoughts and nodded. He looked at the origin spirit mark in his palm, finally feeling a bit more confident. With a flick of his sleeves, the array formation fluctuated and the two of them vanished from sight. Lei Qianjuan's eyes swept around. Although his expression was calm, his heart was tumbling with tumultuous waves. Everything around him seemed normal at first, but when he looked at it again, it was different. It was like a rippling surface of water, constantly changing at every moment. Every moment was independent and different. Standing on the outside, this thing's beyond mountain was incomparably mystical. It was independent of yin and yang, unaffected by the changes of the sun and moon, but once one entered, one would discover its true mysteries. Suddenly, Lei Qianjuan's complexion changed. He turned around and saw a black-robed figure quietly standing there. Behind him was a woman. She was the divine realm maid he had seen that day. When had these two people appeared? He hadn't even sensed them. Lei Qianjun took a deep breath and his heart became even more dignified. He took a step forwards, but before he could speak, an old voice sounded out from beneath the black robe. Rock City Master, I originally had no intention of interacting with you. Why did you come to my things beyond mountain and disturb my peace? Qin Yu had already understood just now that this was the first time they met. No matter what, he couldn't reveal the slightest weakness. Instead, he had to display a certain toughness. And this was more in line with the identity he was currently playing. Lei Qianjun cupped his hands together. I came here because I had no other choice. I ask that you understand. His eyes fell on the black robe and his eyebrows furrowed imperceptibly. He couldn't say why, but he felt that something was wrong. His eyes flashed. Lei Qianjun found the crux of the problem. It was a feeling of incompatibility. The two people in front of him didn't seem to fit in with where they were. At first glance, even though he only saw their backs, Qin Yu understood why Xiang Shui feared Lei Qianjun so much. Killing intent. There was an indescribable amount of it. It was as thick and viscous as viscous liquid, nearly tangible as it wrapped around his body. As he looked down, he could hear countless mournful wails in his ears, filled with despair and resentment at the end of their lives. Qin Yu had the ability to see through the surface and see through the essence. He could determine that all of this killing intent was accumulated bit by bit in the process of slaughter. At such a scale, there were likely trillions of lives that had died under Lei Qianjuan's hands. This was a true butcher. Killing intent was invisible and intangible, but it had already seeped into his flesh and blood and soul. This caused Lei Qianjuan's every movement to exude an intimidating aura that caused one to instinctively feel fear. At this time, although Lei Qianjun was only slightly frowning, in Qin Yu's eyes, the monstrous killing intent around his body was like a raging sea that would erupt at any moment. Not good. Although Qin Yu didn't know what the problem was, it was clear that Lei Qianjun had sensed that something was wrong. Without much time to think, Qin Yu took a step forward. The origin spirit mark in his palm flashed, and a trace of majesty broke out from his body. In the next moment, his mind quickly calmed down. The violent killing intent around Lei Qianjun in front of him also seemed to become normal. This was because, at this moment, through the origin spirit mark, Qin Yu not only borrowed the power of the origin spirit, but also the vision of an original God realm expert. City Lord Lei, what do you want to do? Chapter 900. Although he had used his greatest trump card, the original spirit mark, Qin Yu wasn't sure if he could hide it from Lei Qianjun. After all, although he hadn't seen Qin Yu fight with his own eyes, he could sense that Qin Yu's aura wasn't much different from the Dragon Lord's. Although he wasn't at the original God realm, the gap between them should be very close. If he couldn't subdue him, Qin Yu sighed inwardly. No matter how unwilling he was, he could only choose to run. Disregard everything and fight to the death? Forget it. It wasn't necessary. Moreover, the power of the original spirit mark wasn't endless. Xue Zheng was in such a state, so it was better to be careful. If he wasn't careful and used too much power, he would have no place to cry if something happened to his body. In fact, Qin Yu's guess was correct. Although the ordinary original spirit mark was a strong deterrent, Lei Qianjun could resist it with his strength. When the time came, he would be able to judge Qin Yu's real situation and expose his profound tricks. The wonderful thing was that the original spirit mark in Qin Yu's palm had a real original God sleeping. Therefore, Lei Qianjun could feel that the person in front of him was a real heaven master who could sweep across the world. Although Qin Yu's aura seemed to have a little problem, a giant was still a giant. He could crush Lei Qianjun's body with a casual strike. His path of the God realm was reaching the peak day by day. He could faintly feel the majesty of a higher level. It was like comparing a lake to an ocean. They couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. Original God, it was an original God. At this moment, Lei Qianjun couldn't help but be absent-minded. Originally, he thought that the person in Beyond Objects Mountain was a character at the peak of the divine path. His misjudgment was like the difference between heaven and earth. This kind of character who stood at the peak of the world, who could change the color of the sun and moon with a wave of his hand. Why would he appear in Peng City? Lei Qianjun subconsciously asked himself. He then forced a smile. Not to mention anything else, he was sure that his previous guesses were just a joke. An original God realm expert was enough to move unhindered in the world. Even the royal family had to treat him with respect. He wouldn't put a small Peng City in his eyes. Lei Qianjun hurriedly recalled the entire process of their encounter. He was sure that he hadn't offended Peng City. Fortunately, he didn't act rashly. Otherwise, if he offended an original God realm expert, the consequences would be unimaginable. Taking a deep breath, Lei Qianjun bowed respectfully. Qianjun of Peng City, I do not know Senior's identity. If I have offended you in any way, please forgive me. At this moment, not to mention the other experts from the City Lord's mansion, even the steward, who had always been shrewd and expressionless, couldn't help but widen his eyes in shock. Even when facing the envoy that came from the imperial city, the City Lord treated him as an equal. When had he ever been so fearful and fearful? That's right, he was fearful and fearful. They could feel the uneasiness of the City Lord right now. Senior, to be able to make the City Lord act like this, and to address him in such a manner, there was only one possibility. Original God. As soon as this thought popped up in their minds, the butler and the others held their breaths. They subconsciously bent their backs and pressed their shoulders against the wall. At this moment, The air was filled with a suffocating pressure. Xiang Shui was dumbfounded. She looked at Lei Qianjun, who was doing his best to retract his aura and become as docile as a kitten. No matter what, she could not connect him to his previous image. In truth, even though Xiang Shui was incomparably afraid of Lei Qianjun, his image was exactly the type that she liked the most. Powerful, dignified, cold, he possessed endless authority, and he could look down on all others with disdain. But such a Lion King like man hadn't even said 2 words before he had been dealt with in a single exchange? Xiang Shui groaned inwardly. She looked up at Qin Yu. Just who was this boy? How could he have such fierce tricks up his sleeve? Qin Yu was also a bit stunned. But because he was hidden in his black robes, it wasn't obvious at all. Although he was confused, it was clear that this insufferably arrogant Lei Qianjun had been thoroughly shaken. That was good, that was good. She had to hurry and force him to retreat. Then they wouldn't interfere with each other and they could move on from this. But before Qin Yu could speak, Lei Qianjun was the first to speak. Senior, my daughter encountered a great calamity when she was young. She luckily didn't die, but her foundation was damaged. A few days ago, she was attacked by a strange poison and her life is hanging by a thread. I heard that Senior is currently collecting treasures that can enhance the soul. As long as you save her, Qianjun is willing to offer them all to you. Light flashed, and a massive number of jade boxes appeared on the ground. They opened on their own, revealing the items sealed within. Immediately, brilliant colors surged in the air, and all sorts of intoxicating auras wove together. Just taking a breath was enough to shake one's spirit and cause one's soul to instinctively give birth to an endless desire. Qin, you couldn't say the words that were at the tip of his tongue. During this period of time, he had gone through intensive training and gained a greater understanding of soul treasures. Putting aside what he didn't recognize, every item in the jade box was a peak treasure. He silently calculated. If he could complete this transaction today, then Qin Yu wouldn't need to continue playing tricks. He would just pack up and leave Beyond Things Mountain. He would return to Riverwater City and go into seclusion. Seeing the black-robed man remain silent, Lei Qianjun didn't dare to believe that Qin Yu had been knocked unconscious by a great gift that had fallen from the heavens. He just couldn't help but sigh. An original god was indeed an original god. What he thought was a precious gift. Yet this person didn't even care about it. He hesitated for a moment before saying, "Of course, if Senior is not satisfied, there are still some treasures in Rock City's secret storehouse. Qianjun can offer them up with both hands." No, no, no. If Lei Qianjun continued speaking like this, Qin Yu feared he would have a nosebleed. With a light cough, the black-robed man swept his eyes over the group from Rock City. He subconsciously stood up straighter. I can give it a try, but the problem with this girl isn't small. Whether or not she can survive will depend on her luck. Lei Qianjun was overjoyed. Thank you, Senior. He truly doted on his only daughter. If he could save her life, he wouldn't hesitate, even if he had to spend more resources. The steward respectfully placed a soft couch on the ground with 2 Lei family masters. The light that wrapped around Lei Xiaoyu scattered, revealing a pale Lei Xiaoyu leaning against the couch. She had clearly been awake for some time and had seen everything that had occurred. At this time, besides awe, her eyes were also filled with longing and expectation. If one could live on, no one would be willing to die. Moreover, this was a little girl who had yet to experience the world. Her life should have just begun. It was her. Qin Yu was startled. At first, he feared Lei Qianjun, but then he was knocked unconscious by the treasure. For a moment, he didn't realize it was this little girl. She was Lei Qianjun's daughter? Xiaoyu, why haven't you bowed to Senior yet? If you can survive, you must remember this great debt of saving your life. Lei Qianjun shouted out. Lei Xiaoyu struggled to bow. Thank you, Senior, for saving me. Qin Yu glanced at her. You stay here. Without permission, you're not allowed to casually walk around. As he spoke, he glanced at Xiang Shui. It was unknown what this woman was thinking, but she seemed to be in a daze. Cough! Hearing this reminder, Xiang Shui regained her composure. She followed Qin Yu's gaze and steadied her mind. She stepped forwards and put away the jade boxes on the ground. Every time she took one, her heart would shiver. Then she began to calculate. For better or worse, she was a participant in the plan. Although she hadn't done much, she had still been scared into a miserable state by Lei Qianjun. I don't want 50%, 40%, or even 30%. It shouldn't be too much to give me 1 or 2, right? The air rippled, wrapping around Qin Yu, Xiang Shui, and Lei Xiaoyu. They vanished from sight. The butler glanced around and said tentatively, "Master, this is—" Lei Qianjun nodded slowly. "Original God Realm. An extremely powerful original God Realm expert. Although he had touched the peak of God Realm, it seemed like there was only a thin line between them. However, this thin line was like the distance between heaven and earth. Lei Qianjun had been arrogant his whole life. He had never admitted defeat. However, he wasn't sure if he could break through to the original God Realm. Perhaps this was a chance. If he could rope in this man from things beyond mountains, his position in the heavenly Chu Empire would be as stable as Mount Tai. Lei Qianjun was a qualified father. He loved his daughter a lot. However, he was also the master of Peng City, the overlord of an area of hundreds of thousands of miles. After confirming Qin Yu's competence, he couldn't help but change his mind. Lei Xiaoyu fell into a deep sleep. Looking at her pale face, which was much smaller than before, Qin Yu instinctively recalled the longing and light in her eyes before she fainted. Such a pitiful girl. That's right, she was pitiful. Even if she had a powerful father and a noble birth, if he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Qin Yu wouldn't have believed how she had endured the heart-wrenching pain to live until today. In Qin Yu's eyes, besides the surface, her entire body was already riddled with holes. It was a miracle that Lei Xiaoyu could endure until today. Taking a deep breath, Qin Yu made up his mind. Whether it was Lei Qianjun's sincere offer or his pity for this girl, as long as he had a way, he would help Lei Xiaoyu recover. At least there was some fate between them. Although the process wasn't pleasant, it was still a kind of fate. However, Qin Yu soon found out that his thoughts were too simple. He knew that Lei Xiaoyu's wounds were hard to heal, but he didn't think that the price would be so high. Within the collapsed space, the great sun phantom sent out its consciousness. When she was young, someone had cast a witchcraft spell on her. After being sealed, she was able to live until today. But not too long ago, the goo worm was activated. This girl should have died already, but someone used a heaven-defying technique to sacrifice a large amount of vitality to forcefully extend her life for 10 days. If that was the case, then I could think of a way. But later, someone broke the last bit of vitality in her body and forcefully stimulated it for the goo worm to absorb. For now, she can hold on for around half a year, but it also completely cut off her path of survival. Qin Yu frowned. Is there really no way? The little blue lamp paused. There is. The first method is to find the corpse of an original God Realm expert and refine its blood essence for the goo worm to swallow. Once the goo worm finishes its evolution, not only can she escape this hopeless situation, but her strength will also increase. Qin Yu shook his head. What kind of joke was this? Not to mention whether or not there were corpses of original God Realm experts in this world. Even if there were, with his small arms and legs, if he dared to do anything, he would be smashed into pieces. Being able to subdue Lei Qianjun was already a great stroke of luck. Qin Yu had never thought that playing tricks was a long-term path. There is another method. I can use my Xiantian strength to reconstruct her body and soul, and then forcefully extract the goo worm. But this will consume a great deal of energy. The small world I am creating might collapse because of too much Xiantian strength, and I will fall into a deep slumber. Qin Yu fell silent. He looked at Lei Xiaoyu's pale face, and after struggling for a bit, he inwardly apologized. Although he had many cards in his hand, and even the sun and moon force field that shook the little blue lamp, Qin Yu never doubted that the little blue lamp was his greatest support. It was the boat that would help him cross the long river of cultivation and reach the final shore. This price was too great, so great that Qin Yu couldn't accept it. This price was far too great, so great that Qin Yu was unable to accept it. He could save Lei Xiaoyu, but he couldn't. The little blue lamp seemed to sense his fluctuating mood. It suddenly said, "You don't need to feel guilty. Even if you decide to save her, I will still refuse." Qin Yu forced a smile. "I don't feel guilty. I have only met her several times, and we can't even be considered friends. I won't recklessly disregard everything because of a moment of soft-heartedness. Forget it. I've already made up my mind, so there's no point in saying more. If I can't save her, then can I make sure she doesn't suffer and walk the final path of her life?" Chapter 901. When Lei Xiaoyu woke up, it was as if she had gotten rid of the nightmare that had haunted her for a lifetime. She felt unprecedentedly relaxed. He felt like he could fly at any moment. His body no longer ached from time to time. That clear feeling of his life being devoured every moment had completely disappeared. He closed his eyes, opened them again, closed them again, and opened them again. It wasn't a dream. From the corners of Lei Xiaoyu's eyes, large teardrops fell. She flipped over and respectfully knelt down. "Thank you, Senior, for saving me. I will remember this grace for the rest of my life. Xiaoyu will never forget it." Before she woke up, Qin Yu had been hesitating about whether or not he should tell her the truth. But as he saw the heartfelt smile on Lei Xiaoyu's face, he sighed inwardly and finally made his decision. "You have just recovered from your injuries, so you need to recuperate even more. Maintain a bright and beautiful mood, and don't get angry." An aged voice sounded from beneath the black robe. Lei Xiaoyu was slightly stunned. It was not only because of these words, but also because she actually felt a trace of warmth from the other party's eyes. The senior, who had always been cold to his father, was actually such a person? Even though she couldn't guess the true reason, it didn't affect Lei Xiaoyu at all. She felt even more respect for Lin Ming. She bowed and said, "Thank you for your reminder. I have suffered since I was a child, and now I can finally live like a normal person. My heart is filled with joy and gratitude. I will live a good life and not let you down." Lei Xiaoyu glanced at the black-robed man in front of her and blinked. She hesitated for a moment before asking, "Senior, have we met before?" Qin Yu was silent for several breaths of time. He shook his head and said no. He flicked his sleeves, and space fluctuated. "Let's go. I'll send you back." The smile on Lei Qianjuan's face froze for a moment as he looked at Lei Xiaoyu. Soon after, it became even more radiant. He hugged her and bowed respectfully. "Many thanks, Senior." Lei Xiaoyu's body began to recover. Her emotions were surging, and a trace of tiredness rose from the bottom of her heart. She quickly fell asleep. Lei Qianjun lowered his head and glanced at her before handing her over to the housekeeper to take care of. He cupped his hands in greeting and asked, "Does Senior have any instructions for taking care of me in the future?" Qin Yu stepped down. Space immediately wrinkled, wrapping around the two of them and isolating them from the outside world. "You've sensed it." Lei Qianjuan's expression was heavy. "May I ask, Senior, how much time does she have left?" Qin Yu said, "I won't be affected by external forces. I should be fine for 3 years." As for what happened after that, Lei Qianjun naturally understood. He squeezed out a smile and said, "This child, Xiaoyu, has been tormented by witchcraft ever since she was a baby. Although she appears to be very happy, I know that she is doing this on purpose for me to see. Although it cannot be cured, at least from today onwards, Xiaoyu still has 3 years to truly live happily. I still want to thank Senior for giving her this time." As he spoke, he bowed. Qin Yu paused for a moment and said, "I wasn't able to save them. City, Lord Lei, take back a portion of the reward. No, I believe that Senior has already done his best. Moreover, using those things to exchange for 3 years of happiness for little you. Qianjun believes that it is worth it. Lei Qianjun bowed once again. If Senior feels that it is not appropriate, Qianjun has another request today. Qin Yu nodded. Speak. I, Qianjun, have already found out who planted the goo worms back then. It's just that I never had the chance to uproot them. Qin Yu frowned. You want me to take action? Lei Qianjun shook his head. Qianjun is not that stupid. I only hope that Senior can let Xiaoyu stay here and help me secretly leave objects beyond mountain. Qin Yu looked at him. Where do you want to go? Lei Qianjun didn't understand, but he still said, Wuling City. Qin Yu pondered for a while. Don't resist. Space suddenly shook as if a tsunami was rising, gathering from every direction. Lei Qianjun could feel that although the energy in this space was tremendous, it wasn't a threat to him. He just let himself be submerged. In the next moment, his vision darkened. The tearing feeling disappeared. When he opened his eyes again, Lei Qianjun was shocked. Wuling City. He had arrived at Wuling City. Objects Beyond Mountain was almost 100,000 miles away from here. However, he could teleport here in just one thought. Could his soul consciousness directly lock onto a place 100,000 miles away? That was terrifying. At Lei Qianjun's level, it wasn't that he had never met an original God Realm expert. However, he had never heard of anyone with such power. Could it be that the man in Objects Beyond Mountain was a peak existence even among the original God Realm experts? Taking a deep breath, Lei Qianjun calmed down the shock in his heart. Now wasn't the time to think too much. His cold eyes fell on Wuling City. At this moment, his sudden arrival had been discovered by the people in the city. Some silhouettes flew up from the city. The leader was a warrior of the Wu family. Several days ago, he had followed Wu Zuqing to Pring City. The warrior clasped his fists to greet Lei Qianjun. I didn't know you were coming. The Wu family didn't go out to welcome you. Please forgive us. While he was talking, his mind raced. Sweat beaded on his forehead. The Wu family had confirmed that Lei Qianjun had entered Objects Beyond Mountain. He hadn't come out yet, but now he suddenly appeared here. It wasn't simple. Could it be that he had discovered something? But even if Lei Qianjun knew that the family head was in seclusion, did he dare to attack Wuling City alone? Was this a joke? If Lei Qianjun had such strength, he wouldn't have survived 13 times. Everybody would have knelt down and sung their surrender. Don't panic. Calm him down first. The family head was about to come out. Once the Broken Heaven sword was finished, everything would be settled. Glancing over the warriors in front of him, Lei Qianjun took a step forward. Monstrous, murderous intent erupted around him. He was like an awakened beast roaring to the sky. Rumble! The sky above his head suddenly darkened. Endless dark clouds surged out, covering the sky and the sun. It was as if the yin and yang of heaven and earth had been reversed. Puff, puff! The several Wu family warriors all spat out blood and retreated. Their eyes were wide open, filled with shock and disbelief. Lei Qianjun made a move. He really made a move. He shed all pretense of cordiality and attacked the Wuling County alone. Crazy! He must be crazy. Whoosh! The sound of something piercing through the air approached. The Wu family warriors were frightened. No. Boom! Several warriors exploded in the air. Blood and flesh splashed everywhere. The murderous intent around Lei Qianjun became even stronger. He looked down at the Wuling County and roared, "From today on, I want there to be no Wu family in this world." Buzzing! A layer of light appeared and instantly covered the entire Wuling County. The Wu family had a history of hundreds of thousands of years. They produced many powerful warriors and had a deep heritage. They had carefully managed their foundation and were naturally prepared. But just as this layer of light appeared, it began to shake. Of the 21 hubs that maintained it, 4 of them were completely paralyzed. Even though it wouldn't directly cause the shield to collapse, its defensive strength was reduced to less than half of what it was before. Lei Qianjun lifted his hand and punched out. The shield twisted crazily. Then came the second punch. With an earth-shattering noise, the shield completely collapsed. In the Wu family mansion, there were constant roars of shock and anger. No one had expected that the defensive hub that they had worked so hard to manage and thought to be infallible would be invaded and eaten away by Peng City. It simply couldn't function as it should have. Luckily, it managed to stop him for a while. The Wu family mansion's protective array had been completely activated. Even though it wasn't as strong as the protective array, it could still stop Lei Qianjun for a moment. At that time, the army controlled by the Wu family would come to kill him. No matter how strong he was, if he didn't retreat, only death awaited him. Humph! The only hub of the family's great array is in the Still Thought Hall. Let's see if Lei Qianjun has any other methods. A Wu family expert roared, his eyes filled with shame and anger. The dignified Wu family had actually been forced to such a state by a single person. This was simply a disgrace. Once the patriarch came out of seclusion and successfully refined the broken heavenly sword, he would definitely attack Peng City and kill Lei Qianjun on the spot. I believe that Lei Qianjun still has a way. A calm voice suddenly sounded from a corner. Everyone's expressions changed, and they looked over with unfriendly eyes. Xu Heng, what do you mean? An outsider was actually more trusted than they were. This had long since caused the Wu family cultivators to be dissatisfied. Now, there were already several people eager to try. If he dared to say more, they would take this opportunity to teach him a lesson. They wanted to let this lackey know that the Wu family belonged to the Wu family and an outsider like him couldn't order them around. Xu Heng had always given others the impression that he was a man of few words. He almost never took the initiative to speak, but today he was clearly different. He looked around at the people in the Still Thought Hall, the corners of his lips curling up. Don't you want to know why I know that Lei Qianjun still has a way? Not good. Capture him. A Wu family elder roared out, his arm reaching out to grab Qinyu. Xu Heng said in a soft voice, "It's already too late to realize." He closed his eyes and didn't resist, allowing this hand to grab him. In the next moment, bang! All of the Wu family cultivators were startled by the loud explosion behind them. They turned around, dumbfounded. They saw that the area around the Still Thought Hall seemed to have been ravaged by a typhoon. It had been razed to the ground by a terrifying strength. All of the Wu family masters that had gathered here had fallen to the ground one by one. Besides several powerful elders, almost everyone else had been wounded. One of the elders had half of his body blown up. He lay on the ground, blood gushing out of his body. It seemed as if he would soon die. This just what was going on. Without giving them any time to think, there was a loud rumble. Lei Qianjun's killing intent soared up into the skies. He lifted his hand and pressed down with his 5 fingers. In that instant, trillions of killing intent erupted, condensing into substance and turning into a deathly prison of killing intent. It was a deathly pale color that covered the entire Wu family. Today, anyone with the bloodline of the Wu family will not be able to escape. As soon as he stepped into the deathly prison of killing intent, Lei Qianjun lifted his hand and pressed down. A large number of Wu family cultivators didn't even have time to scream before their bodies exploded. Ah, run. Lei Qianjun, if you dare slaughter my Wu family, the other forces will definitely retaliate. Sir City Lord, no matter what happens, please give my Wu family a chance. We will also leave you a path of retreat. Lei Qianjun ignored them and walked forward step by step. Wherever he passed, there were countless corpses and rivers of blood. He really didn't want to let a single person go, regardless of whether they were male or female, old or young. quickly break open the deathly prison of killing intent. It's too late. We can't escape. Fight! The Wu family experts that had nowhere to run howled in despair. They all launched suicidal attacks, trying to use their lives to fight for a chance of survival for their family. They were all suffering and waiting for Wu Zuqing to come out of seclusion. At that time, their desperate situation would naturally be resolved. But what caused the Wu family members to despair was that Wu Zuqing, who they thought was their only chance of survival, had yet to appear. Bang! With a heaven-shaking explosion, the last Wu family elder fell to the ground. Before he died, his eyes were wide open, filled with despair and unwillingness. How could the Wu family have fallen to such a state? Lei Qianjuan's eyes were indifferent. He stepped over his corpse and walked through every corner of the deathly prison of killing intent, killing everyone he saw. Finally, when he stopped, besides the thick smell of blood in the air, there was only a deathly silence. Lei Qianjun stood in the ruins of the Quiet Thought Hall and slowly said, "Wu Zuqing, when you ordered people to use witchcraft insects on my son in the past, did you ever think that such a day would come?" He stepped forwards, and the ground collapsed. Cracks rapidly extended underground, tearing apart the dome of the underground palace and revealing the cross-legged Wu Zuqing. At this time, a sword was suspended in front of him. The sword blade was complete, but its surface was covered with cracks. If one looked carefully, they would discover that it was actually composed of 37 small swords that were perfectly assembled together. The Broken Heavens Sword. On the day the sword was formed, a calamity descended from the heavens. The sword blade was destroyed into 37 pieces, but the sword spirit wasn't destroyed. The pieces condensed into a sword body and scattered throughout the world. Thus, it gained the name of the Broken Heavens Sword. After countless years, the Broken Heavens Sword was complete once more. But at this time, Wu Zuqing, who had personally given it new life, only had despair in his eyes. An incomparably terrifying, swallowing strength erupted from the Broken Heavens Sword. It firmly sucked him in, making it impossible for him to escape. Pa! Lei Qianjun fell to the ground. His eyes were cold and indifferent. The Broken Heavens Sword was born with ill intentions. It was destroyed by the wrath of the heavens. Now that this sword spirit is gathered together, it will surely suffer a backlash and die. The Wu family has chased after the Broken Heavens Sword for generations, but they didn't know this secret. Because of this, their bloodline was cut off. It is truly pitiful. Puff! Wu Zuqing spat out a mouthful of blood and died on the spot. The Broken Heavens Sword hummed and flew up, floating in the air. A burning heat flashed in Lei Qianjuan's eyes, but he quickly suppressed it. He knew that he didn't have the qualifications to wield this sword. The Wu family was destroyed because of it. If it weren't for the fact that he harbored other thoughts, how could he have implicated Xiaoyu and caused her to suffer a life of suffering? Chapter 902. Lei Qianjun, who dominated Peng City, once again displayed his strength to the world. The Wu family, which had hundreds of thousands of years of inheritance and experts, was wiped out in a single day. Even if there were a few fish that escaped the net, they were destined to live an ignoble existence in the darkness, unable to stir up any waves. This massacre displayed Lei Qianjuan's strength and ruthlessness, causing everyone to revere and fear him. However, his following actions displayed the rationality and clear-headedness of a qualified leader. On the day that the Wu family was destroyed, Peng City sent out a secret report to the city lord that the Wu family had the intention of rebelling. All right, everyone knew that this was definitely a false accusation. However, the Wu family was already finished, and no one would speak up for them. This was a righteous act. What truly made people sigh with emotion and praise was Lei Qianjuan's second step. Peng City withdrew from the Wu family's territory. In other words, after destroying the Wu family, he didn't want anything and instead took out all the benefits to bind his allies. The third step was for Peng City to sign a series of agreements with the 12 cities, expressing their sincerity and further appeasing them. With just these 3 steps, the raging waves that should have been set off by the Wu family's extermination quickly dissipated into nothingness. The imperial family that wanted to make an issue of this matter and cause trouble for Peng City tried several times to no avail. In the end, they could only settle things peacefully. After this incident, Peng City's position was as stable as Mount Tai. Although it seemed like they didn't gain anything, their control over their territory had risen to a whole new level. Everyone had witnessed the events that had transpired. They had seen Lei Qianjun kill decisively and not reveal anything. No matter what their true intentions were, they had to praise him for his ferocity. In the eyes of the world, Lei Qianjun, who was incomparably powerful, was now filled with helplessness. When he finished dealing with these trivial matters and returned to objects beyond mountains to pick up Lei Xiaoyu, he found that the person had already left. The steward and the others had been in the mountains the entire time and didn't know when the person had left. With that person's realm, how could they have known if he had quietly left? Sighing inwardly, Lei Qianjun gathered his thoughts and smiled. Xiaoyu, come home with father. Qin Yu began his seclusion. After leaving objects beyond mountains, he quietly returned to Riverwater City. After saying a few words to the siblings and Ku and an Xen, he returned to his room. This was very hard for Xiang Shui to accept. Her eyes were wide open. She had just done a perfect job and obtained countless treasures from Lei Qianjun. Couldn't they celebrate? Cultivation, cultivation, cultivation. His entire mind was filled with nothing but cultivation. There was no joy in life at all. Qin Yu's life was so dull that it was hard to imagine. At least, during these days that Xiang Shui had followed him, she had never seen him relax for even a moment. It was as if he was an old fellow on the verge of death, waiting for a breakthrough to extend his life. That's right, it was this feeling. But Xiang Shui could clearly feel that Qin Yu's soul was filled with vitality and was far from declining. There was no threat to his lifespan at all. Moreover, with his current strength, breaking through to the godly realm was a sure thing. At that time, his lifespan would practically be endless, so why should he fight for a day and a night? She couldn't figure it out. She really couldn't figure it out. Xiang Shui curled her lips. She could only conclude that this was Qin Yu's strange hobby. Perhaps he was the kind of person who would feel uncomfortable if he didn't cultivate. In any case, she needed to relax for a while. Although she didn't put in much effort during this trip to Beyond Objects Mountain, she really felt tired. Fortunately, her tiredness paid off. Xiang Shui patted her pockets, a beautiful smile on her face. Disregarding everything else, this brat Qin Yu was truly generous. 15 days later, Qin Yu opened his eyes, a smile on his face. Just now, he felt a resonance from his soul. Although there was no reason for it, he knew that his second road to the godly realm had opened. Shua, his figure moved. He left Riverwater City and stood in the skies. He lifted a hand and pointed a finger forward. Rumble, rumble, between the heavens and earth, trillions of spiritual strength began to boil, as if stars were descending from the highest heavens. An invisible pressure descended. Qin Yu coughed and flicked his sleeves, scattering the blue point finger. Divinity, realm barrier, heaven and earth dragon gate. Qin Yu laughed out loud. He finally felt it, and he was sure that as long as he wanted to, he could forcefully open the gate with the blue point finger at any time. At this point, his road of divinity had been completed in 2. He took a deep breath and calmed his excited mood. Then he turned and walked away, vanishing from sight with a single step. He didn't have much time to immerse himself in joy, because he had only opened 2 roads to the godly realm. Qin Yu's goal wasn't just these. 2 hours after he left, a golden carriage that seemed to be wrapped in flames passed by. With a light whistle, the carriage came to a stop. 2 figures flew out. The old man in the lead carried a sword on his back. After sensing it for a moment, he revealed a look of praise. What a powerful supernatural ability! He looked at the disciple beside him and asked, "What did you see?" She wore a pure white blade master robe and had her hair tied up with a silver belt. The young girl thought for a moment and said, "Not too long ago, someone used a supernatural ability to shake the barrier of the godly realm. But he held back his strength and didn't open the gate." The one-armed old man said, "How does this supernatural ability compare to yours?" The young girl had a calm expression. "I can break it with a single sword." The one-armed old man shook his head, a deep meaning in his eyes. "Not necessarily." The young girl said, "This person hasn't broken into the godly realm, so it's clear he has great ambitions. Soon, the divine seal saint stone will descend in the imperial city. He should head there." The one-armed old man arched an eyebrow. "So what?" The young girl turned and walked away. "I'll break it with a single sword for you to see." The one-armed old man laughed, praise on his face. Although he had been a bit unwilling to accept this disciple in the past, he was now completely satisfied. His sword path focused on the principle that he was the only one in the world, and all living things could be cut apart by his sword. With this confidence, he didn't need to worry about his sword intent not being condensed. He turned to look at the imperial city and lightly said, "This is the last smelting trial. After you complete it, we will rush to the imperial city. Let's see whether or not the sword in your hand can sweep through the world." Qin Yu didn't know that he had already been innocently chosen by this sword-loving young girl to be an opponent that must be cut in half with a single sword strike. With the blue point finger completed, he didn't stop and began to break through the third road of the divine realm. This time, Qin Yu chose the 5-element samsara. The circulation of the 5 elements coincided with the great Tao of the world, circulating in an endless cycle. If he could completely perceive it and understand the 5-element Tao, Qin Yu had absolute confidence he could trigger the response of the world and condense the glory of the divine seal. At the same time, he constantly refined treasures to enhance the intensity of his soul. But soon, Qin Yu discovered that he had encountered a new problem. This problem lay in refining treasures. He left seclusion with a frown. After finding Xiang Shui, Qin Yu asked her his question. The strange expression on her face caused Qin Yu's frown to deepen. "If you have something to say, just say it. What is the meaning of that expression?" Xiang Shui licked her lips. "What I mean is, how did you cultivate to your current boundary?" These were her true thoughts. There were clearly times when Qin Yu was unfathomably deep and unfathomable, to the point where even she found him unfathomable. But now, there were clearly common sense things that he was ignorant of. If it weren't for her fear of arousing Qin Yu's dissatisfaction, she really would have gotten to the bottom of things and asked him just where he came from. Listening to her tone and expression, Xiang Shui clearly knew the reason, and it didn't seem to be too big of a problem. Qin Yu let out a sigh of relief and turned to sit down. He leaned back in his chair and stretched his waist. "Hurry up and tell me, big miss." As he finished speaking, he looked at Xiang Shui's expression. Qin Yu felt that if he hadn't suddenly thought of something and added the word little, this woman would have definitely flipped out. As if satisfied with how Qin Yu addressed her, Xiang Shui smiled at him. "If you weren't in such a hurry to cultivate and had stayed in the nunnery for a while longer, you would have naturally learned of this matter. For example, let's say you raise a pet and it's very rare. You pile up all sorts of delicious food and feed it. In the beginning, your pet must be very happy and have a good appetite. But when it's full, it needs time to digest before it can continue to eat heartily. Don't you think so?" Before she finished speaking, Qin Yu reacted. Although the analogy of a pet wasn't too reliable, Qin Yu wasn't in the mood to worry about this anymore. He furrowed his eyebrows together. "Are you saying that I have to give my soul time to absorb it? But it has already absorbed it." Xiang Shui curled her lips. "That is only on the surface. Your mind is already in chaos. If you close your eyes and carefully sense it, you will naturally understand." Well, when Qin Yu discovered that the absorption speed of his soul had slowed, he was indeed upset. He took a deep breath and suppressed all his thoughts. Then he closed his eyes. A moment later, Qin Yu opened his eyes. He didn't say a word, but his complexion became increasingly ugly. Xiang Shui glanced at him. You discovered? Just because the soul has been absorbed doesn't mean that it can be immediately absorbed again. You can think of it as a second digestion. Once it is completed, it will naturally return to the fastest absorption speed. So this isn't anything at all. You brat, don't be so unsatisfied. Other cultivators dream of experiencing this sort of distress. Qin Yu said, How long do you think it will take me to recover? Xiang Shui shook her head. Everyone is different. There is no way to answer this question. Qin Yu waved his hand. Then let me rephrase my question. The things that Lei Qianjun gave me, according to my performance, how long will it take for me to completely refine them? City Lord Lei is extremely generous, and the things he gave me are top quality. I estimate that it will take at least 100 to 200 years. Xiang Shui swept her eyes over Qin Yu. Why are you in such a hurry? It is only 100 to 200 years. With your lifespan, that isn't anything at all. Xiang Shui wasn't wrong. Even if he hadn't broken into the divine realm yet, after achieving the ancient immortal body, Qin Yu's lifespan would increase by at least several 100,000 years. 100 to 200 years wasn't anything at all, but Qin Yu couldn't wait that long. He had to return to his original world within these 200 years. Seeing Qin Yu's complexion become increasingly ugly and the pressure around him become frighteningly low, Xiang Shui hesitated for a moment. Tell me why you are in such a hurry. Perhaps I can help you think of another way. Qin Yu glanced at her. Xiang Shui uncomfortably shifted her body. This is called an equivalent exchange. Before she could finish speaking, Qin Yu interrupted her. I want to save someone. Xiang Shui was startled. Shuizhang? Qin Yu shook his head. My wife. Xiang Shui's eyes widened. Are you lying to me? Qin Yu continued to say, Because of me, she was secretly harmed and fell into a coma. In 200 years, no, at most 150 years, I must return to her side and awaken her from her slumber. Chapter 903. Xiang Shui finally understood the reason why Qin Yu had to live each day with a sense of urgency. Looking at Qin Yu's serious face, her mouth twitched. She mumbled, I didn't know that you were such an infatuated man. She didn't wait for Qin Yu to feel like crying or laughing. She continued, All right, your answer passes. I know the solution. She put up one finger. The first one is simple. You just need to find an original God realm expert to help you recover faster. Qin Yu's face darkened. He did have an original God realm expert. However, he was in a coma, waiting for him to save his life. Tell me the second one. Xiang Shui arched her brows, putting up her second finger. This one is a little difficult. People are divided into 3, 6, and 9 classes. Some wander the streets, starve and freeze, while some are born with a bright future laid out in front of them. That's the point. The point is that the situation you encountered is more likely to happen in a group of people who are superior to others. Thus, they have a solution. They build a formation called soul casting. They use the power of the formation to extract the mysterious energy of heaven and earth to speed up the digestion of the soul. Xiang Shui glared at Qin Yu, pouting her lips. Don't look at me like that. I'm not talking nonsense. I've seen something like this before. Moreover, harumph, I know where to find it. Qin Yu frowned. How did you know? Xiang Shui smiled contentedly. Your sister has a good plan. I've predicted that you would have this day. That's why I asked around. Qin Yu rose his hand and took out a jade box. This is for you. Tell me where the formation is. Deal. She took the jade box and opened it to take a look. Xiang Shui's smile became even brighter. She carefully put it away and said, Actually, you should be able to guess. In this area, who has the qualifications and ability to build a spirit casting formation? Peng City. Standing in front of the majestic city gate, Qin Yu sighed with emotion. He didn't have the time to run away. Who would have thought that he would come to this place proactively? Things in this world were always changing. Indeed, Xiang Shui had heard that it was the master of Peng City who had built the soul-casting formation. It wasn't that Qin Yu didn't want to play some tricks to get the right to use the soul-casting formation. But after considering it again and again, he still suppressed this thought. That was because there were too many loopholes in this matter, and it couldn't stand up to scrutiny at all. The slightest carelessness could lead to a huge mess. With a deep sigh, Qin Yu followed the stream of people into Rock City. He had already decided to think of another way to borrow the soul-casting formation. However, he still had no idea what to do. He could only take it one step at a time. Qin Yu casually found a place to stay and began to wander around the city. But soon, he discovered that he seemed to have made a fool of himself. The fact that the Peng City Lord had constructed the soul-casting array was no secret. Many people on the streets knew about it. Gritting his teeth, Zhang Xian thought, no wonder Xiang Shui was smiling so brightly back then. I'll make a note of it first. I'll find an opportunity to settle the score with her in the future. After walking around for several days, Qin Yu discovered that he had underestimated things. Indeed, many people knew that the City Lord's mansion had a soul-casting formation. However, it had never been open to the public. Yes, not even once. In the past, there had been others who came to the City Lord's residence and offered a lot of rewards, hoping to use the soul-forging formation to speed up their cultivation. But in the end, none of them had obtained anything. Sitting in his room, Qin Yu thought for a long time. Then he bitterly smiled. It seemed that Xiang Shui was right. In the short term, besides using the handsome man trick, there really wasn't any other way. After hesitating again and again, Qin Yu let out a long sigh. He pushed open the door and walked out. The reborn Lei Xiaoyu had thoroughly activated her love for life in her bones. She didn't want to waste a single day on cultivation. That's right. She didn't want to waste it. If it weren't for the fact that cultivation could reduce the pain in her body, she absolutely wouldn't have spent so much time on it. Lei Qianjun smiled at her choice. With a wave of his hand, he approved it. However, there was an agreement between father and daughter. At most, Lei Xiaoyu could have fun for 3 years. Afterwards, she would have to follow his arrangements and enter a mystic realm to cultivate until she broke into the divine realm. As for what mystic realm it was, Lei Qianjun didn't say. He only told her that it was a secret. After obtaining the decree, Lei Xiaoyu completely let loose. Every day, she would run out of the city, Lord's mansion. Besides the experts who protected her in secret, she was like an ordinary girl, pulling a group of friends to go crazy. Today's activities were arranged by Xinqing. He said that there was a place that would definitely be fun. Lei Xiaoyu was in high spirits. The group of young men and women chatted and laughed as they hurried along. Suddenly, Lei Xiaoyu, who was talking to someone, widened her eyes. She ran over and fiercely patted the shoulder of a passerby. Qin Yu, why are you here? At this moment, she truly felt that the shadow of her life had been completely dispelled. All that was left was light and sunshine. Otherwise, why would the person she had been searching for so long suddenly appear in front of her after her old illness had been cured? Was this a compensation from the heavens? Yes, that must be it. As her thoughts raced, Lei Xiaoyu's smile became increasingly radiant. Her rosy cheeks stared at Qin Yu. Xinqing and Chao Yaozong had seen Qin Yu once before. At this moment, they glanced at each other from behind, a bit of coldness in their eyes. In the massive rock city, there were millions upon millions of cultivators. Their group had also hidden their identities and mingled into the endless sea of people. Could there really be such a coincidence that they would meet here? It seemed that Lei Xiaoyu's massive search had been discovered. This Cultivator called Qin, you should already know of Lei Xiaoyu's identity. Disregarding everything else, there was at least one thing that they weren't wrong about, and that was that today's encounter wasn't a coincidence. Qin, you had already been waiting here. Originally, Qin Yu believed that he had a sufficiently strong heart, but as he faced Lei Xiaoyu's heartfelt joy, he couldn't help but feel a bit of guilt. On that day, he had chosen not to save her, and now he wanted to use this girl. Although this was understandable, no matter what, such actions couldn't be considered glorious. After a brief pause, he nodded and said, "Long time no see." The subtle changes in his expression and his dry words confirmed Xin Qing and Chao Yaozong's suspicions. The depths of their eyes turned even colder. A toad lusting after swan meat. This boy, he really had some guts. Ha ha ha. Isn't this the person you were looking for some time ago to thank Xiaoyu? Since we've run into each other, how about we play together? It'll be more lively with more people. Chao Yaozong smiled as he walked over. Lei Xiaoyu's eyes brightened. She stared at Qin Yu. Are you willing to go? Facing her expectant gaze, Qin Yu didn't know why, but he couldn't carry out his plan of loosening the reins to grasp them better. After a brief silence, he nodded. All right. Xin Qing walked over and pulled Lei Xiaoyu forwards. Hurry up. There will be more people soon. I don't want to wait in line. Several women smiled and crowded around her. Lei Xiaoyu only had time to glance back at Qin Yu before she was pulled to the front of the crowd. Chao Yaozong smiled. Xiaoyu is a good girl, right? Qin Yu glanced at him. Chao Yaozong turned his head. But not everyone has the qualifications to think about a good girl. I don't care what ideas you have, but you'd best put them away, otherwise you will regret it. With that, he patted Qin Yu on the shoulder, turned around and followed. Today, Xin Qing brought everyone to a bustling night market. Although night had just fallen, there were already people weaving through the streets. Besides all sorts of food, there were also many fun stalls. The one that attracted the most people was a little game called Opening the Bowl. The rules were simple. The stall owner would lay out a reward, and the customer would need to place an item into the center of the table. Then, the 9 bowls on the table would topple over. The customer needed to find their item in a set amount of time. Within 10 breaths of time, they could choose any of the stall owner's reward items. Within 20 breaths of time, they could take back their item. If they passed 30 breaths of time, the item they placed in would belong to the stall owner. This could be considered an interesting gambling game. Of course, in the end, this game was a test of a cultivator's cultivation. As long as one's cultivation was high enough, they wouldn't suffer a loss. But then again, for powerhouses at such a level, they likely wouldn't rely on such a method to make a fortune. Even if they occasionally met 1 or 2, they would usually give up after making a move. After all, the higher one's status was, the more they cherished their face. Xin Qing had an excited expression. This is it. It's really fun. Yesterday, I lost a hairpin I liked. Today, I must take it back. Listening to her, Lei Xiaoyu understood the rules. She swept her eyes over the reward items, eager to give it a try. This was the first time she had encountered a gambling game like this. But she immediately thought of something. She turned around and saw Qin Yu standing not too far away. She smiled at him. Chao Yaozong saw this and frowned. He immediately chuckled and said, "What's so difficult about this? Just watch me win, and I'll take back your hairpin." As he spoke, he pushed his way to the front of the crowd. After a customer helplessly gave up, he shouted, I'll go. As he spoke, he cupped his hands across his chest. This little brother and my friend have made a bet. I must win back the reward she lost. I ask everyone to be magnanimous. He had an elegant demeanor, and the way he dressed was extraordinary. Although some people were secretly dissatisfied, they didn't reveal it. After thanking him again, Chao Yaozong stood in front of the booth. Booth owner, my personal belongings are all here. You can choose one. The booth owner was a stern man. His eyes were calm. He glanced around and said, Customers' items are too precious. My booth doesn't have anything suitable. Chow Yaozong waved his hand. It's fine. You can choose anything you like. But I must say in advance that if I win, I will take away the hairpin that the young miss left behind. The man lowered his head and thought for a moment. That doesn't conform to the rules. Since Sir sincerely wishes to play, I will add another item to the reward column. But I must also say in advance that if there are other customers who want to take it away, they must take out something that satisfies me. As he spoke, he reached into his chest and carefully took out a wrapped cloth bag. After opening it, a purple gold puppet doll was revealed. It was carved in the shape of a woman in a long dress. For some unknown reason, her face couldn't be seen clearly, as if one were looking at a flower through a fog. How beautiful! In the crowd, many female cultivators cried out. Now that night had fallen and the surrounding lights shined, the light on the puppet woman's dress was like a river of stars above her head, dazzling to the extreme. Lei Xiaoyu's eyes widened. She stared at the puppet and subconsciously bit her lips. Chow Yaozong looked at it several times. Booth owner is very particular, but I will do as I said before. After I win, I hope that you can give me the hairpin. Of course. The man pointed a finger. The jade pendant tied to customer's waist. As he spoke, he took a step back and gestured for Qinyu to begin. Chow Yaozong placed the jade pendant in the middle of the round wooden table. With a loud crack, it closed and the 9 bowls on the table toppled over, covering the table. Begin calculating interest. Chow Yaozong looked at the wooden table with rapt attention. On the 7th breath of time, he lifted his hand. Just as his voice fell, the wooden bowl he was pointing at opened, but there was nothing inside. How is this possible? Chow Yaozong was shocked. Pa! The other bowls were opened. The jade pendant was in the first row, underneath the 3rd bowl. The booth owner cupped his hands together. Thank you for your patronage. According to the rules, the jade pendant belongs to me. He brushed his palm and took away the jade pendant. After thinking for a moment, he took down the puppet. Hold on, Lei Xiaoyu suddenly said. Booth owner, I like this puppet very much. I also want to try it out. Perhaps it was because they wanted to admire the puppet for a moment, or perhaps it was because they didn't like this group of young men and women with extraordinary backgrounds and wanted to see them suffer a bit more. The crowd parted on their own initiative. Lei Xiaoyu walked in front of the booth. Chow Yaozong whispered, Xiaoyu, don't try anymore. I've already lost here, you. It's fine. Lei Xiaoyu replied. She looked up and said, Booth owner, you can choose one. Chapter 904. The stall owner looked hesitant. He glanced at Chow Yaozong and said, This puppet is my beloved item. I shouldn't have taken it out today, but I received this customer's precious jade pendant. Since Miss is his friend, I will make an exception, but I will make it clear that only Miss is allowed to participate. After that, I will put the puppet away. He extended his hand. Do you know the rules, Miss? Lei Xiaoyu nodded. It's a personal item. Stall owner, just pick one. The stall owner glanced around. The jade ring on Miss' finger. Lei Xiaoyu threw it into the hole in the round table. The 9 wooden bowls closed automatically with a snap. The stall owner said in a low voice, Let the calculation begin. She stared at the 9 bowls. On the 6th breath, her eyes lit up. This. She opened the bowls. There was nothing inside. The stall owner smiled. Thank you for your patronage, Mississippi. He opened the other bowls and took the jade ring. He turned and was about to take the puppet. Stall owner. Lei Xiaoyu stopped him. I want to try again. You said before that only I was allowed to participate, but you didn't limit the number of times. Chow Yaozong said lightly, Stall owner, you should be able to tell the value of the jade pendant and ring. Since my friend wants to play a few more times, you shouldn't have any objections. The stall owner thought for a moment. All right, since Miss is happy, I will keep you company. He glanced around. This time, I want the button on Mrs. Shirt. Lei Xiaoyu pulled off the button and threw it. Let's continue. Unfortunately, she made the wrong choice again. The button was taken away by the stall owner. Again. Failure. Again. Another failure. Chow Yaozong tugged at her. Xiaoyu, that's enough. This stall owner's traps are quite powerful. I feel my heart ache just looking at the items you lost. Xinqing also said, yes, let's go somewhere else. There are many more fun things to do here. Lei Xiaoyu shook her head. I want to try again. She glanced at the puppet. Stall owner, let's continue. The stall owner frowned and cupped his hands. Miss, how about this? I will return half of the items you lost. Let's end this. Lei Xiaoyu said, I only want this puppet. The stall owner sighed. The rules of the treasure keeper cannot be broken by my hands. If the miss insists, then let's continue. The 11th failure. Lei Xiaoyu lost her last personal item. Her face was pale, and she stared at the puppet without moving her eyes. The stall owner heaved a sigh of relief. Miss, you don't have anything left. You can continue to participate. Chow Yaozong's face darkened. He lowered his voice and said, Xiaoyu, don't be sad. Since you really like this puppet, I will definitely get it for you. No. Lei Xiaoyu shook her head. None of you should act recklessly in this matter. I will think of a way myself. She looked up. Stall owner, I like this puppet very much. If you are willing to sell it, I will definitely give you a satisfactory price. The stall owner bitterly smiled. I don't doubt Miss' sincerity, but according to the rules of the treasure keeper, you are not allowed to sell what you have. If you can't get it after 11 tries, it can only mean that you are not fated with this puppet. Don't force it. Lei Xiaoyu bit her lips. I want to try one more time. She lifted a hand. Light surged, and a puppet appeared between her fingers. There was a loud gasp from the crowd. Everyone began to understand why Lei Xiaoyu was so determined to obtain this puppet. This was because what she had taken out was a puppet made from the exact same material as the stall owner's. The only difference was that the puppet in Lei Xiaoyu's hand was a size smaller and was carved into the shape of a playful little girl. The stall owner's eyes brightened. Miss, do you want to try using this puppet? If so, I can make an exception and give you 3 chances. Lei Xiaoyu took a deep breath and nodded. She carefully placed the puppet into the hole in the round table. Miss, the interest calculation has begun. The first time Lei Xiaoyu failed. The second time it was a repeat of the first. Beads of sweat hung on the bridge of her nose. Lei Xiaoyu's fingers trembled as she stared at the 9 wooden bowls. Illusions began to appear in her eyes. This, no, not this, the calm voice of the stall owner constantly entered her ears. Lei Xiaoyu's face paled and her breathing quickened. The 10th breath. Her body shook. If she couldn't find the puppet, she had already lost the qualifications to obtain the one in the stall owner's hand. Moreover, in another 10 breaths of time, even the one in her hand would be lost. Bang, bang. In Lei Xiaoyu's ears, the sound of her heartbeat seemed to be infinitely magnified. She gradually found it hard to breathe. From left to right, 2nd row first, a calm voice sounded out from beside her. Lei Xiaoyu looked up in shock. What she saw was Qin Yu's calm face. She didn't know why, but at this moment, all of her panic and sadness vanished without a trace. It was like when she saw Qin Yu, all the troubles that shrouded her vanished. As she was in a daze, Qin Yu's voice continued, If you continue to be in a daze, there won't be enough time. Ah, Lei Xiaoyu regained her composure. She pointed a finger. This? She didn't even consider what Qin Yu said. What if he was wrong? A trace of mockery flashed in the stall owner's eyes. Before he could hide it, it froze and began to shake in disbelief. At this time, the little girl puppet was lying peacefully beneath the bowl. Lei Xiaoyu screamed, It's here, it's here! She turned and hugged Qin Yu. Thank you, thank you. Qin Yu glanced at the stall owner. His eyes were light, but just as the stall owner was about to say something, his heart chilled. Before he could respond, Qin Yu had already taken away the little girl puppet. All right, hurry and put away the puppet. Lei Xiaoyu's face flushed red. She took the puppet and looked at Qin Yu with gratitude. Qiao Yaozong's face stiffened. He quickly covered it up and squeezed out a smile. Qin Yu, good job. It's all thanks to you being here today. Xin Qing also hurried over. A group of women surrounded Lei Xiaoyu, chattering away. Qin Yu drew back several steps. He glanced at Qiao Yaozong, who was approaching. Is something the matter? Qiao Yaozong looked at him, his eyes turning icy cold. It looks like you didn't remember the advice I gave you before. Behind the crowd, there was an uproar. Then the crowd parted and a group of city guards responsible for maintaining order in the night market walked in. The leader coldly shouted, "We have received a report that your stall was secretly tampered with and violated the trading rules. Come with us for an investigation." Without giving anyone a chance to respond, several city guards lifted up the stall and brought the stall owner away. Qiao Yaozong grinned as he ran in front of Lei Xiaoyu. Don't worry, don't worry. Since the person has been taken away by the city guards, the item won't be able to run away." As he spoke, he winked at Xin Qing. Xin Qing angrily said, "No wonder our Xiaoyu couldn't choose anything at all. It turns out that this stall owner secretly tampered with the item. Humph! The rules of the treasure guards are very strict. If there really is a problem, then he will be in deep trouble. Moreover, everything we lose to him will be returned to us in perfect condition." Qiao Yaozong indicated that he would go and take the item back. He said that the stall owner had violated the rules first, so they didn't need to pay too much attention to him. Lei Xiaoyu hesitated for a moment before nodding. She said that they shouldn't make things too difficult for him and that it was fine as long as they took the puppet. Qiao Yaozong grinned and agreed. Then he turned and chased after the city guards. Xin Qing and the others were tired from talking. They pulled Lei Xiaoyu into a temporary night stall on the side of the street. There were 4 people at a table, but as luck would have it, there was an empty spot for Qin Yu. Just as Lei Xiaoyu was about to stand up, Xin Qing smiled and said, "Brother Qin, you always love to help others. I'm sorry, but you can sit by yourself for now. Once Qiao Yaozong returns, you'll have company." Qin Yu nodded and sat down. It had to be said that the taste was quite good. It had been a long time since he had satisfied his appetite, so he ate to his heart's content. As for Lei Xiaoyu, she didn't know the taste of her food. She would occasionally glance at Qin Yu and then look outside. Finally, just as Qin Yu was eating to his satisfaction, Qiao Yaozong rushed back, his face filled with indignation. "Fuck! The city guards are a bunch of trash. They were careless halfway and allowed the treasure guard to escape." He had an ashamed expression. "Xiaoyu, I'm sorry. The puppet was also taken away. But don't worry, I've already ordered the city guards to search with all their might. There is no way that fellow can escape." Lei Xiaoyu had a disappointed expression. Her eyes dimmed and she forced out a smile. "It's fine." She took a deep breath and stood up. "I'm a bit tired today. You all continue playing. I'm going home first." As she reached the door, she turned around. "Brother Qin Yu, can you see me off?" Qin Yu put down the bamboo stick in his hand and stood up. He nodded at the several people who were staring at him. "Thank you for today's hospitality. Goodbye." He followed Lei Xiaoyu and the two left together. The night deepened and there was a slight chill. But not only did the number of people in the night market not decrease, but it actually increased. After walking in silence for some time, Lei Xiaoyu let out a long breath. She turned and said, "Brother Qin, we haven't officially met yet." She stopped and reached out a hand. "Hello, my name is Lei Xiaoyu." After a moment of hesitation, he grasped her hand. Her fingers were soft and cool. "Qin Yu," Lei Xiao Yu gently smiled. Then from now on we are friends. What happened before was my fault. I hope you don't mind it. Qin Yu shook his head. I've already forgotten. Xiao Yu blinked. Brother Qin, do you know why I'm called Xiao Yu? Qin Yu was a bit stunned. Did little girls these days have such quick thoughts? Thinking for a moment, he honestly shook his head. My father said that on the day I was born, the sky was filled with rolling thunder, but the rain was always pitter-pattering. It wasn't grand at all. Then, before I was even born, he determined that I was a girl. He said that although I took on his surname, I didn't have his grandeur. Xiao Yu, so I was called Lei Xiao Yu. My father said that he didn't expect me to have any achievements in this life. I just wanted to be a little fish and live a peaceful life, sheltered for the rest of my life. As she spoke to hear, Lei Xiao Yu wrinkled her nose in dissatisfaction. Then she slyly smiled. I was a little angry that he looked down on me like that, but thinking about it, my current life is pretty good, so I didn't bother to argue with him. Qin Yu was silent for a moment. He slowly said, Your father must have loved you very much. Lei Xiao Yu proudly looked up. I never doubted that. She quickened her steps and turned around. The two faced each other. Brother Qin, what about you? Does your name have any meaning? Qin Yu shook his head. No. Lei Xiao Yu curled her lips. How could there be no meaning? You've seen Chao Yaozong before. He's that loathsome fellow. His father gave him this name because he hoped that he could bring honor to his ancestors. Although it seems that this wish will be difficult to realize, for better or worse it is still a wish. Tell me, Brother Qin, I've already told you such embarrassing things. Qin Yu said, I really didn't. I'm an orphan. I'm not too sure how I got my name. Ah. Lei Xiao Yu's eyes widened. Brother Qin, I'm sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. Qin Yu smiled. I'm not that weak. It's been many years, and I've long since gotten used to it. His eyes drooped, and he suddenly said, Can you tell me why you want the puppet in the stall owner's hand so much? Lei Xiao Yu fell silent. Then she revealed a wide smile. It's nothing. It's because I thought that the puppet was a gift from one of my elders. But afterwards I accidentally lost it, and I've always wanted to find it. Although she was smiling, the sadness hidden deep in her eyes couldn't escape Qin Yu's observation. Qin Yu sighed inwardly. Do you want to take back the puppet? Lei Xiao Yu's eyes widened. How? Chapter 905. Lei Xiao Yu's eyes widened even further. This was the first time she had ever held hands with someone of the opposite sex, and it was the extraordinary Qin Yu in her heart. After a brief daze, her face flushed red. She felt dizzy from lack of oxygen and followed behind Qin Yu. It was only when Qin Yu let go that she regained her composure. She pursed her lips, trying to hide the unnatural expression on her face. Big Brother Qin, what are we doing here? Qin Yu said, to smash my rice bowl. Don't say anything and just follow beside me. As he spoke, he walked towards the dense crowd on the side of the road. Lei Xiao Yu hurried to follow. It was only then that she discovered that this was a treasure keeper's booth. Qin Yu silently walked forwards. Without making any movements, an invisible strength spread out, and the crowd in front of him parted like water. Many eyes fell on Qin Yu. Their pupils shrank. They couldn't say why, but they all had the same thought. This person wasn't someone they should provoke. Since he wasn't someone they should provoke, his methods weren't too excessive. As they looked at Lei Xiao Yu, who followed behind Qin Yu, everyone realized that he was trying to gain face in front of a woman. This sort of man wasn't someone they should provoke, so there was no need to say anything. The path was smooth. Qin Yu brought Lei Xiao Yu to the front of the booth. The booth owner had clearly noticed them. He swept his eyes over them, and it was unknown what he was thinking. After the customers in front of him bitterly smiled and drew back, he smiled and pointed a finger. These two customers, I wonder if you are interested in the treasure keeper's game. Qin Yu stepped forwards. I am interested. Choose. Seeing that this was someone who understood the rules, the booth owner swept his eyes over them and smiled. The things you bring with you are all very good. You can choose any one of them. Everyone knew that treasure keepers had the sharpest and sharpest eyesight. Several dissatisfied cultivators couldn't help but secretly rejoice. He really wasn't an ordinary person. Qin Yu glanced at him. He lifted a hand and took out a palm-sized stone from his chest. Although it seemed ordinary, it constantly emitted a faint fragrance. How about this? Heaven fragrance stone. The crowd cried out. Those that didn't recognize it all paled. Although it was called a heaven fragrance stone, the truth was that this was the egg of an ancient monster beast that had long since gone extinct. Because of some reason, the larvae had died before hatching, and the egg had been buried deep in the earth. After countless years, it had evolved and was extremely rare. The stall owner's expression changed slightly. Customer, your item is too expensive. I don't have any matching reward items. Qin Yu lightly said, if you think it's too precious, then if I win, you can take a few more things. The stall owner's eyes flickered. He had originally thought that it was a fat sheep, but now he felt that something was amiss. He carefully looked at Qin Yu. Although his aura was a little vague, he was definitely not in the divine realm, even if he had some background. So what? Humph. Although most of the treasure protectors are lone wolves, it's not like they don't have anyone to rely on to pass down their legacy. How could he not take the wealth bestowed by the heavens? With a smile on his face, the stall owner stretched out 3 fingers. I don't dare to take advantage of you. If you win, you can take 3 items at once. Deal. Pa! With a flick of his finger, the heaven incense stone fell into the hole in the round table, and the 9 wooden bowls fell to the ground. The stall owner licked the corner of his mouth. The interest calculation begins. Dear customer, please! Before he finished speaking, Qin Yu raised his hand and pointed. The wooden bowl was opened, and the heaven incense stone was quietly lying inside. Everyone, including the stall owner, immediately stared at it. Coincidence? Besides this, they couldn't think of any other possibility. As for whether or not Qin Yu had seen through it with a single glance, what kind of joke was this? The treasure protectors made a living. If this was all they had, then they would have long since gone bankrupt and lost everything. The stall owner's lips twitched. He squeezed out a smile and said, Dear customer, your methods are excellent. According to the rules, you can choose now. Qin Yu casually grasped, and 3 reward items flew into his hand. He turned and handed them to Lei Xiaoyu. Take them. Lei Xiaoyu cried out and hurriedly received them. As everyone saw this, they were even more certain of their previous guesses. As expected, he was trying to show off in front of a woman. The stall owner felt his heart ache, but also relaxed. There were good and bad rewards. The items that Qin Yu had casually grabbed just now weren't too valuable, so he was able to reduce some of his losses. As the stall owner sighed inwardly, he suddenly heard Qin Yu say, One more time. The stall owner's eyes brightened, and he smiled. Of course. As long as you are willing, the treasure protector will welcome you at any time. Dear customer, please. Pa! The heaven incense stone drilled into the hole, and the wooden bowl was covered. Just as the stall owner was about to speak, his heart twitched. From the corner of his eyes, he saw Qin Yu lift his hand again. This time, his speed seemed to be a bit faster than before. It couldn't be again? Do you really think you brat can have such good luck every time? Many people sneered inwardly, but just as these sneers appeared, they turned cold. In a deathly silence, the stall owner looked at the heaven incense stone beneath the wooden bowl, and beads of sweat began to form on his face. He was scared out of his wits. The first time was luck, and the second time was luck? What a joke! How could there be such a coincidence when the probability of choosing 1 out of 9 superimposed twice? Fine, even if there is such a possibility, just look at this person in front of him. From the start until now, Did he seem to be trying his luck? He had encountered a ruthless person, and amongst all ruthless people, the most ruthless kind. The stall owner wiped away his sweat as he thought about everything. He even stole a glance at Lei Xiaoyu, but he had no impression of her at all. He hadn't done anything to offend anyone. So why did the boss want to mess with him? Qin, you didn't care about the stall owner's expression. He took back the heaven incense stone and took the 3 rewards. He turned and handed them to Lei Xiaoyu, saying, "Continue." Hearing these words, the stall owner's heart nearly stopped. He bent down and revealed the most humble smile he could muster. "Dear customer, may I ask if I have offended you in any way?" Qin didn't answer, and instead asked, "I can't play." The stall owner's heart sank. He knew he was in deep trouble. This person was doing this on purpose. There had to be a reason. Otherwise, such a ruthless person wouldn't waste time here. His thoughts raced. The stall owner swept his eyes over the crowd. Seeing that the person he arranged had already left, he relaxed a little and prepared to delay for time. But facing Qin Yu's eyes, he opened his mouth several times but didn't dare to say anything. He felt that this handsome young man in front of him was like a monster. If he was dissatisfied with him, then his fate would be miserable. So, by the time the messenger came back, the game had gone on for another 5 rounds. The stall owner's face was deathly pale. The crowd parted and 3 people walked onto the field. The one in the center was a bearded man. His aura and eyes were calm and steady. The stall owner bitterly smiled, his voice hoarse. "Third brother!" The bearded man called Third Brother swept his eyes over the shelves where the rewards were placed. He frowned and cupped his hands across his chest. "Dear customer, the little games of us treasure guards are just for everyone to have fun. If you keep taking action, isn't that a bit beneath your status?" Qin Yu gave Lei Xiaoyu a reassuring look. He handed over the items in his hands and turned around. "I am just an ordinary person with no status. Since the stall owner has accepted my items, then, according to the rules of the treasure guards, as long as I don't leave on my own initiative, I have the qualifications to continue placing bets." Third Brother lightly said, "Why bother? If news of this spreads, it won't look good on the customer's face." Qin Yu ignored him. He looked at the stall owner. "Let's continue." The stall owner's legs weakened and he fell to the ground. This person was also a clever person. He had already decided that he would never do business with Qin Yu again. Otherwise, he would throw away all his savings today. Moreover, his current attitude was to increase the pressure on Qin Yu. With so many people watching, he had already been forced to the step. How could he continue? This trick worked on most people, but unfortunately, Qin Yu was not one of them. He grasped Lei Xiaoyu's hand and lightly said, "Is this the level of the treasure guards of Rock City? If you can't afford to play, then don't come out and set up a stall." Third Brother coldly snorted. "Dear customer, your words are too serious. What you see is only the most worthless of Rock City's treasure guards. Since the customer wants to play, I will accept this round. Would you like to continue at my stall? Of course, the items in my hands are very precious. Even if I use the Heaven Incense Stone as a bet, I can only take 1 item with each win." The more precious the item in the treasure guard's hands, the stronger he was. He said this to put pressure on Qin Yu, hoping that he would quit while he was ahead. After all, with a single glance, he could tell that the man and woman in front of him were not people to be trifled with. It would be best if there was no conflict. Peace breeds wealth. Taking a step back, even if he won, it wouldn't be good for the reputation of the treasure guards if news of this spread out. "You guys are so good at playing, trying to swindle us ordinary cultivators of our treasures. Do you think we're stupid?" Unfortunately, Third Brother's words didn't have any effect at all. Qin Yu readily agreed. Third Brother bit his cheeks and took a deep breath. Since his path of retreat had been cut off, he had to regain his face, even if he had to be punished. "Brat, if you don't know what's good for you, then don't blame me. It's been a long time since I've set up a stall. I have a rule that every customer that enters must play at least 10 rounds. Third brother's eyes revealed a cold intent. Chinyu glanced at him. No problem, but I also have a rule. As long as you accept my bet, unless I leave on my own initiative, then the bet must continue. Third brother bared his teeth. Of course, as long as the customer is willing, I, Susan, will accompany you to the end. Driving away the stall owner who was playing dead on the ground, third brother flicked his sleeves and the eating tool quietly fell to the ground. The table was large and red in color. The surface was smooth and thick. It was clearly an object that had been passed down for many years. Hiss! A red-level treasure table. This is going to be fun. A knowledgeable spectator sucked in a breath of cold air. There were many that knew, but there were even more that didn't. After a series of explanations, everyone looked at Chinyu with pity in their eyes. This young man was too inexperienced. He didn't understand the principle of stopping when he was ahead. He had even kicked away the steps that had been delivered to his feet. Now he was in deep trouble. According to the rules of the treasure guards, the tables used were divided into 3 levels: yellow, blue, and red. Yellow was the lowest and red was the highest. Of the 3 colors, the richer the color, the stronger the person was. At the same time, the different colors of the table also served as a subtle reminder to the customer that it was best to act within one's capabilities and not give something away for free. From this perspective, the treasure guard industry still had a bottom line. But at this time, no one was in the mood to pay attention to this. They were all waiting to watch the fun. Red. This was enough to prove third brother's strength. To bet 10 times in a row, if he really won, then that would be a great fortune. Third brother's eyes were filled with arrogance. He stepped forward, and without any movement, the tiles on the ground rose up on their own, turning into a stone shelf. Light flashed in his hand, and the 10 reward items were placed on the shelf. Hiss! Seeing these items, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. There was no need to say anything else. As soon as these items were placed on the shelf, third brother's status in everyone's hearts became much heavier. Judging from his appearance and wealth, he was definitely one of the top few among the treasure keepers. Third brother stood across the table, his aura calm and steady. He actually had the demeanor of a great master. He gestured with his hand and said, "If the customer has no objections to the reward items, then let us begin." Chin, you didn't think that his third brother would have such a level of skill. But this was just as well. He didn't want to waste any more time. Okay. With a nod, the heaven incense stone fell into the hole in the table. On the red table, 9 protrusions appeared at the same time, stretching into 9 large bowls.